Chapter 975. Dad, I beg of you, you can't let Lin Qian take Li Jin away. Han Xiao knelt on the ground and begged her father. It's no longer up to you. Dad, if you really send Li Jin back to the Li family home, when she wakes up, your daughter will be sent to the military court because I single-handedly caused Li Jin's accident. Han Xiao had no choice but to reveal the truth. It turned out, she had never saved Li Jin. After all, the person that hurt him was Han Xiao herself. Father Han was shocked when he heard that. Because he truly didn't expect there to be such a truth. Dad, if I had a choice, do you think I would do this? Han Xiao fell to the ground. Father Han looked at the ceiling helplessly. In the end, he compromised. After all, she was his only daughter. It's fine if I don't hand Li Jin over, but from now on, he will never appear in front of the Li family again. He will either die or forget everything that happened. Han Xiao was stunned. She never expected that Li Jin would end up in such a state. Lin Qian and Han Yu waited for a long time, but Father Han didn't come out. They couldn't help but look at each other and instantly understood. Something must have happened. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken so long to bring someone out to meet him. But, just as Han Yu was about to question the housekeeper, Father Han hurried over and said apologetically, "Constable Han, Miss Lin, I'm so sorry. Li Jin was originally at the Han family home, but I'm not sure if he's woken up, but he left without saying a word. There's no sign of him at home right now. You're such a big Han clan. How could you let a seriously injured person escape?" Han Yu clearly did not believe it. "Officer Han, I know you don't believe me, but you can carry out a search. I'm telling the truth. Li Jin's injuries aren't light and I don't want anything to happen to him. Let's go out and search for him. Who knows, we might find some clues. Even if I have to search, I'll have to search the entire Han clan first. Alright, the butler will cooperate with you to search the Han family. The rest of us will go out and look around." Father Han pretended as if nothing had happened. If not for the fact that Han Yu was used to seeing liars, he would have really been deceived by the Han family. So, after Father Han left with his men, Han Yu conducted a thorough search of the Han family home. He did not miss a single blind spot. No one. That sly old fox. I'm afraid that he has already made arrangements and hid them somewhere else. Sometimes, you don't have to use the door to send someone away. All you have to do is set up a ladder by the window of another room and it will be enough to send them away. After hearing Han Yu's words, Lin Qian's tears overflowed from her eyes. Han Xiao wants Li Jin. Why would she torture him like this? I'm afraid you'll have to ask the Han clan. After Han Yu finished speaking, he patted Lin Qian on the shoulder. Let's search the vicinity first. There's always hope. Li Jin was indeed escorted out of the Han family home through the window on the 3rd floor. 2 men carried his tall body towards the suburbs. But halfway there, he was woken up by the pain of a tug. He saw that the 2 men had placed him in the grass like a corpse. On the other side, the 2 men were digging a hole. Perhaps, they wanted to bury him on the spot. Li Jin tried his best to stay conscious, but he couldn't move his body. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that the 2 men were digging to escape. But, unfortunately, he was discovered. The 2 men forcefully dragged him back. Li Jin's head was spinning as he thought that he might have to say goodbye to Lin Qian forever. But, at this time, a loud yell was heard from afar. "What are you doing? Stop!" The 2 men were so scared that they immediately ran away. They were too ashamed to return to the Han family home, so they got into their car and fled for their lives. Meanwhile, Lin Qian and Han Yu didn't find Li Jin at the Han family home. At this time, Han Xiao walked out of the bedroom and into the living room. Even at a time like this, she refused to admit defeat. "Lin Qian, I told you a long time ago that Li Jin doesn't want to see you again. If he really cares about you and knows that you're here, why would he run away?" To tell you the truth, Li Jin woke up a few hours ago and we talked for a long time, including his determination to divorce you. Lin Qian just listened and didn't answer. I heard that you almost had a miscarriage. What a shame, why didn't you miscarry? As soon as Han Yu heard this, he grabbed Han Zhao's chin and warned coldly, you will fall into my hands sooner or later. When that time comes, it won't be easy. Lin Qian's face turned pale. Just as she was about to retaliate, she received a phone call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Mrs. Li? This is the military hospital. A kind-hearted person just sent your husband here and he is currently undergoing emergency treatment. His vitals are currently normal. If it's convenient for you, please come here as soon as possible. After hearing this, Lin Qian hung up the phone. She said to Han Yu, Constable Han, my mother has fainted. I need to go home and check on her. Since we haven't found her, we have no choice but to call it a day. Han Yu nodded. But, before she left, Lin Qian glared at Han Xiao like she wanted to skin her alive. If anything happens to Li Jin, Lin Qian, will make your life a living hell. After speaking, Lin Qian and Han Yu left the Han family home together. After they left, Lin Qian said to Han Yu, Constable Han, I just received a phone call saying that Li Jin is at the military hospital. After hearing this, Han Yu laughed, no wonder you were in such a rush to leave. Li Jin is quite lucky. At this moment, Lin Qian was eager to return home, so she rushed straight to the hospital. After confirming that Li Jin's condition had stabilized, tears began to flow from her eyes. As Tang Yichen was the first to notify Tang Ning and the doctor notified Lin Qian, Tang Ning also rushed to the hospital. How is he? Tang Ning asked Tang Yichen on behalf of Lin Qian. He suffered some serious injuries, but luckily, none of his vitals were hurt. He should be able to recover after resting for a while. He's already awake. As soon as Tang Yichen said this, Lin Qian rushed into the hospital room. As soon as she saw Li Jin lying on the bed, she immediately pounced on him. Li Jin was awoken by the commotion. But, as soon as he saw Lin Qian, he immediately lifted his hand and patted her on the back. Qian, as he hadn't spoken for a long time, Li Jin's voice was raspy. But, Lin Qian didn't care as she threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. I'm sorry for scaring you again. I'm more than just scaring you. Do you know how difficult it was for me to even see you? Do you know that I'm going crazy looking for you? Lin Qian cried as she tugged on Li Jin's clothes. But, because of her emotions, she ended up fainting. Li Jin was so frightened that he immediately called the doctor. As soon as Tang Ning and the others entered the room, they said to Li Jin, she's pregnant, yet you're strangling her. Do you want to die? Chapter 976. Li Jin was so scared that he immediately let go of her as a look of shock and confusion appeared on his face. This Mo Ting didn't seem any different from before. Afterwards, Li Jin reached out her hand to cover her pale face. Her eyes turned red and it looked like tears were about to fall from her eyes. We thought you were going to abandon Lin Qian and be with Han Xiao. After hearing Tang Ning's words, Li Jin furrowed his brows. He didn't quite understand what Tang Ning was trying to say. Seeing this, Tang Ning explained the entire situation to Li Jin. She included how the Han family caused all sorts of trouble, starting from the hospital and everything that happened at the Han family home. If it was someone else and you could still see them when you woke up, I would have changed my surname to yours. It's because Lin Qian was determined that she wasn't affected by these lies. Tang Ning took a deep breath. Li Jin, if you don't give Lin Qian a satisfactory explanation, I will look down on you. After speaking, Tang Ning left Li Jin's room. After all, she was 7 to 8 months pregnant and she had already done everything that she could. Li Jin listened quietly as he thought about how Han Xiao had violated all sorts of rules during the battle and ended up crashing his plane. He hadn't even gotten even with her yet, how could she scheme against Lin Qian like this? Thinking about all the hurt that Lin Qian had suffered, Li Jin's heart ached. Luckily, Lin Qian trusted him the entire time. As she was merely traumatized, Lin Qian was arranged to rest beside Li Jin. Li Jin watched as Lin Qian fell asleep. Her face was so pale. How many days had it been since she last had a good rest? She even went to the gorge because of him. With this thought, Li Jin blamed himself. Ever since he and Lin Qian had started dating, she hadn't experienced a single day of happiness and was constantly being framed. She was pregnant, but because she needed to find a husband, she had no choice but to run around. With this thought, Li Jin stretched out his arms and pulled the sleeping Lin Qian into his embrace. He gently protected her like she was a precious treasure. Lin Qian was shaken awake. Feeling the familiar embrace, she finally stretched out her arms and hugged Li Jin back. Qian, I'm back. I'm sorry. Have you had a change of heart? Do you want to divorce me? Lin Qian asked mockingly. I will never divorce you. Lin Qian, even if I die, I will never betray my lover or my marriage, Li Jin said firmly. Plus, during the mission, I never saw Han Xiao at all. The only reason my plane crashed was because of Han Xiao. Didn't she save you? Li Jin shook his head. Qian, I will definitely help you. Lin Qian's eyes turned red. She could feel that the man in front of her was indeed her husband. Although he wasn't romantic enough, he was protective enough. Also, since you's pregnant, why didn't you rest at home? Lin Qian, why did you have of? Other than me, who else would look for you? I don't of you, Jean said, Lin, of Jean, T. After hearing this, Li Jin hugged Lin Qian even tighter. I won't let anything happen to me again. I promise. Although he knew that his promise was useless in front of the government, Lin Qian still calmed down. The couple didn't have much time to chat before Father Li and Mother Li arrived at the hospital. After seeing that Li Jin was fine, Mother Li broke down and burst into tears. Mother Li was a strong person. From what Li Jin could remember, he had never seen his mother cry like this. It seemed, this time, he had given everyone quite a scare. The family was finally reunited and Li Jin told her parents everything that had happened from beginning to end. After hearing this, Father Li slammed his hands on the table and stood up angrily. The Han family are too despicable. So, it turns out that Han Xiao was the one that harmed you. How dare she claim to be your savior? How despicable. I will definitely report this matter to the higher-ups. I refuse to believe that the Han family can continue to roam freely. It wasn't easy for Lin Qian to fall asleep under Li Jin's coaxing. At this time, Li Jin's heart ached for the exhausted Qian. Dad, I need to give Qian an explanation for this matter. You should give Qian an explanation too. If I was in her position, I would definitely divorce you as soon as you returned. What kind of woman have you been messing around with? Luckily, Qian trusted you. Mom, I know what to do. When Li Jin said this, his eyes were deep, revealing a rare fox-like expression. He had never been a person to be trifled with. It seemed, the Han family still had no idea that Li Jin had been successfully rescued and thought that they had buried him under a tree. To give Lin Qian an explanation, Li Jin took the opportunity to get to know Police Officer Han. Police Officer Han, can I ask you for a favor? After all, after we find the two men that buried me alive, you will still need to go to the Han family home. Why don't you help me out first? Li Jin's intention was obvious, he wanted to get revenge for Lin Qian. Han Yu thought to himself, this was such an interesting matter that he had to get involved. Plus, just like Li Jin said, as long as he found a witness, he would be able to convict the Han family. So, he naturally had to go to the Han family home to look for clues. So, what was the harm in going? When are you going? Tomorrow. When Qian feels a little better. Li Jin replied as he stroked Lin Qian's hair. Okay, let's keep in touch when the time comes. Li Jin nodded his head and thanked him. He then told his parents to go home and get some rest before he calmed down and pulled Lin Qian tightly into his embrace. Over the past few days, whenever he was conscious, he would repeatedly tell himself that he had to hold on until he could see Lin Qian again. Even if it was just one glance, it was enough. And now, the heavens had given him this opportunity. Not only did he see her again, he even had the chance to hug her in his arms. This was probably the best gift that the heavens could give him. During this time, Lin Qian woke up a few times. Each time, she would cry and throw a tantrum in a panic. Li Jin's heart ached so much that his eyes turned red. He never imagined that at this moment, he would feel so much hatred towards Han Xiao. How dare she hurt Lin Qian so deeply? The next morning, Li Jin, who was supposed to be lying in bed, woke up early. When Lin Qian woke up and saw him, she couldn't help but be shocked. "You're injured so badly." "It's fine," Li Jin smiled. "Don't underestimate your husband. Go wash yourself, I'll take you to get revenge." After hearing this, Lin Qian was a little suspicious, but she did not object. After all, she had never been a kind person. This was something that she had learned from her mother. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pull them up by the roots. Chapter 977. Father Han never expected that Han Yu and Lin Qian would come knocking on his door again. So, when he received Han Yu, he looked at him as if to ask, "Why are you here again?" Han Yu smiled without directly explaining his intentions. He simply pointed to Lin Qian and said to Father Han, "We haven't found her husband and he ended up at the Han family home." If the police don't go to the Han family home, where would they go? "Old man Han, please don't take offense. So you're saying that it's our Han family's fault for saving him?" Father Han asked Han Yu with an angry expression. Old Han, Li Jin eventually went missing at the Han family home. In order to find him as soon as possible, we had no choice but to come here and ask Miss Han to clarify a few things. "I hope you can cooperate." Han Yu beat around the bush before revealing the reason for his visit to Father Han. "As you know, Lin Qian is from the entertainment industry. If this matter gets blown up, it won't look good for anyone, don't you think?" Father Han humphed and said to Lin Qian, "The Han family doesn't have the person that you want. No matter how much you try, it's useless. So what if you're from the entertainment industry? Do you think I'm afraid?" "Uncle Han, please ask Han Xiao to come out." "No matter what you say, you're just making things difficult for each other," Lin Qian replied calmly. Don't all women in the entertainment industry use their bodies to get ahead? If you don't have Li Jin, you can simply find someone else, Father Han mocked. "I don't care how nasty your words are. I want Han Xiao to give me an explanation today." Father Han saw how stubborn Lin Qian was, so he wanted to use some other method to get rid of her. But, at this time, Han Xiao walked out of her room and said, "What explanation do you want me to give you? Li Jin has left and it means that he doesn't want to see you. Why are you still bothering me? How dare you yell at my father? There's no need to waste time talking to them. The Han family is an open and honest family. It's up to the police if they want to believe us. If they don't, they can conduct a second search on the Han family home," Father Han said as he waved his sleeves. "Lin Qian, I'm warning you, if you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for being ruthless. When the time comes, I won't care if you're pregnant or not, I will still make my move." Han Xiao threatened. "Miss Han, you sure talk big. The police are standing right in front of you. Can't you see them?" "The police? Officer Han, take a look at your rank before you come to the Han family to cause trouble. I'm not here to get him back today," Lin Qian finally said loudly after a while. "You don't want me? Lin Qian, you and your boss are both powerful people. Tell me, what are you trying to extort from me this time?" Han Xiao asked arrogantly. "Han Xiao, you really won't shed a tear until you see the coffin, right?" Lin Qian asked sharply as she lifted her head. "See, this is your true face. How disgusting. Who knows, the child in your stomach might not even be Li Jin's. Han Xiao said. Last night, Li Jin appeared in my dream and told me that Miss Han was the reason why his plane crashed. Lin Qian deliberately tested Han Xiao. However, Han Xiao's expression did indeed change. To be exact, she was nervous. Don't talk nonsense here. Don't you know if I'm talking nonsense or not? Lin Qian probed. You're scared, aren't you? Are you afraid that someone will find out and send you to the military court? If that happens, how many years will you be sentenced to? Lin Qian, don't try to mislead people with your lies. Uncle Han, I'm sure you know whether I'm trying to mislead people with my lies or not. Do you need me to repeat what Han Xiao did to Li Jin and what you did to him? Lin Qian questioned the father and daughter. Han Xiao, you were once in love with Li Jin. How could you be so ruthless? Afterwards, you even shamelessly pretended to be Li Jin's savior. Do you have no sense of decency? The more Han Xiao listened to Lin Qian, the more she felt that something wasn't right. After all, Lin Qian's words sounded like she already knew everything. Although Han Xiao felt guilty, she still maintained her composure on the surface. I think you're crazy. You can't find a husband, so you're taking it out on me, your savior. Lin Qian, no matter what you say, the Han family has a clear conscience, and no matter how unreasonable you are, this is the Han family home. Get out of here immediately. I don't want to see you ever again. Everyone in the industry is cursing at you because of your background. Why don't you take a look at yourself? Do you know how badly you've dragged Li Jin down? Constable Han, leave with your men. The Han family home isn't a place where people like you can come and go as you please. In the end, Father Han had no choice but to put on airs. Also, based on what Lin Qian said just now, I can sue her for slander. My daughter saved Li Jin, this is an undeniable fact. Yet, she tried to twist the facts. What an eye-opener. Lin Qian and Han Yu looked at each other, but did not say anything. At this time, another voice suddenly sounded in their ears. Really? How could it be fake? Did your daughter save me? How come I didn't know about this? Li Jin, who had been hiding in the dark, slowly approached Lin Qian and wrapped his arms around her. At this time, Father Han and Han Zhao's expressions changed in shock. Officer Han, since everyone is here today, I'll explain this matter to you. Also, please take down the transcript. Don't worry, Han Yu said as he made an okay gesture to Li Jin. A few seconds later, Li Jin began to explain. Firstly, the problem with my fighter jet was caused by Han Zhao's illegal operation. Although it will take some time, it won't be too difficult to find out the truth. After all, I've already handed the key evidence to the base. Han Xiao caused my plane to crash, yet you insist on saying that you saved me. Han Xiao, you're so despicable that even a man can't compare to you. Secondly, I'm sure Uncle Han and his son are well aware of the fact that you were buried alive yesterday. Although the two culprits managed to escape, they've already been caught by the police. So, you won't be able to escape punishment. You'll also be a soldier. Thirdly, Han Xiao, you've insulted my wife on multiple occasions. You framed, threatened, and lied to me. So, I'm going to write down everything you've said in a report and report it to the entire military. Fourthly, after this incident, the Han family, we're finished. After hearing Li Jin's last sentence, Father Han's heart began to tremble in fear. Don't try to scare me. At this time, Han Yu pulled out his arrest warrant and ordered his men to drag Father Han into the police car. As soon as Han Xiao saw this, she began to panic. Li Jin, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to ruin my family? That's what you deserve. Li Jin said from above her head. Why must you bully Qian Qian? You could have walked onto the right path, but you refused to take it. Don't take my father away. Han Xiao immediately pleaded, but Han Yu pushed her away. Chapter 978. Li Jin, my father isn't someone you can touch. You need to think this through. Li Jin looked at Han Shao coldly. If I can't touch him, then I will. If you want revenge, then come and find me. But, that will have to wait until you are released from prison. Li Jin. Han Shao yelled. I've been by your side for so many years. Even if I haven't done much, I've still put in a lot of effort. Why can't you let me go on account of our many years of friendship? Before you say this, think about it in your mind. Have you ever thought about letting me go, letting Qian go? If you can't do it yourself, how can you expect others to do it? After speaking, Li Jin lowered his head and thought for a few seconds. When he lifted his head again, his expression was even colder. Towards you, I treat you the same as I treat everyone else. I've always treated you like a normal colleague. So, what effort have you put in for me? Just like how you said you saved me, even when Qian exposed your lie, you were still able to keep a straight face. Did you think that your methods would work on me? Han Shao lay on the cold ground and burst into tears. I simply do it because I like you. Everything I do is because I like you, and I'm so jealous of Lin Qian that I'm going crazy. Forget it. If your love means destroying my family, then I really can't accept it. I hope the next time we meet will be in the military court. Otherwise, I don't want to look at you for the rest of my life. After speaking, he wrapped his arm around Lin Qian and turned around. Meanwhile, Han Yu had already dragged Father Han into the police car and was about to leave the Han family home. But, at this time, Han Shao suddenly yelled at Li Jin, if you don't let my father go, I will die right in front of you. If you want to die, then go ahead and die. You are a soldier, so I'm sure you're familiar with the way you move. At least that way, you won't be in so much pain. After speaking, Li Jin limped into the police car with Lin Qian. He didn't care if Han Shao actually attacked him. Li Jin knew that Han Shao was extremely selfish and would never do anything to hurt him. Suicide? If she had the courage, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Lin Qian watched as Li Jin retaliated against Han Shao. Although she pitied her, she did not think she deserved any sympathy. Qian, I've already applied for a transfer. Li Jin said on the way back. I don't think I'm suited for flying anymore. Why? You don't have to feel pressured. I have too many things to do for the Air Force like before. Li Jin hugged Lin Qian. His feelings for her were clear in his words. I will switch to a clerical job and try my best to spend time with you. Lin Qian did not think she was that unreasonable. But, she did not object to Li Jin's decision either. After all, this was his career and he should have his own considerations. Then you stay at home and do nothing. Anyway, I have to continue working. During this time, both Superstar Media and Tangning had done so much for her. So, all she wanted to do was put in more effort for Superstar Media. It didn't take long before Tangning found out about Han Zhao's fate. She was quite satisfied with how Li Jin dealt with the situation. Lin Qian had suffered so much because of him. If Han Shao managed to cover up the truth, then, if Li Jin didn't do anything, she would definitely take responsibility. After all, Superstar Media wasn't someone that could be easily bullied. After Lin Qian's incident calmed down, Tangning's life returned to normal. Perhaps, because she had done so much for Lin Qian, she completely forgot that she had a deep grudge against President Fan. It seemed, Elder Fan had been observing Tangning for quite some time, so he knew exactly when she was most likely to leave the house. So, this time, he stopped her on a street near Hyatt Regency. Afterwards, a few men dressed in black stepped out of Elder Fan's Lincoln limousine and approached Tangning's car. Miss Tang, please come with us. Do you have any ill intentions? I'm sure you're aware that there are cameras everywhere in this area, Tangning asked. Miss Tang, you'll understand once you've seen our master. Afterwards, Elder Fan stepped out of the car. Although his back was a little hunched, his presence as a big brother didn't diminish. As soon as Tang Ning saw this man, she could tell that he wasn't someone to be trifled with. So, she patiently opened the door and stepped out of the car. I'm quite satisfied to see you in person today. Hearing this, Tang Ning could tell that the man was judging her. You don't need to be curious about my identity. My surname is Fan and I have a useless grandson that caused a misunderstanding a few days ago, Elder Fan said. So, Miss Tang, would you do me the honor of having a meal with me? Elder Fan asked. Elder Fan, I'm sorry I can't keep you company, aren't you just worried about your safety? I can promise you that my men won't touch a single hair on your head, Grandfather Fan replied. Perhaps you think that we can talk on the way. Of course, you can choose where you want to meet. Tang Ning sighed. She realized it wasn't a good place to talk on the road, so she suggested they go to a nearby bar to have a seat. Elder Fan did not object as he followed Tang Ning to a nearby cafe. Elder Fan, if you have something to say, why don't you get straight to the point? I heard that you know what my good-for-nothing grandson did. After Elder Fan sat up straight, he felt a little more relaxed. But, the stern expression on his face was still frightening. I don't know. Tang Ning denied. I only heard a few things, that's all. To be honest, I don't believe you. That's why I want to know how you're going to deal with this matter and whether you're going to reveal it to the public. Elder Fan, this is my own business. Elder Fan had been testing Tang Ning's emotions for a long time, but unfortunately, she hid her emotions too well. No one knew what she was thinking about at all. You sure aren't susceptible to force or persuasion, Elder Fan smiled helplessly. Elder Fan smiled helplessly and said to Tang Ning, although it's good to maintain your personality, you will still suffer a lot. You said you wouldn't hurt me. I won't hurt you, but that doesn't mean I can't take you with me. As soon as Elder Fan said this, Tang Ning stood up, I am a public figure. My every word and action is closely watched. If something were to happen to me, do you think the Fan family would be fine? Old man, let me be honest with you. If you and your grandson hadn't come knocking on my door time and time again, I would have stopped paying attention to his trivial matters a long time ago. Did you think I had nothing better to do? Chapter 979. But, you can't deny that you're a person that acts on impulse. If my jerk grandson does something bad to you again, you'll still have to settle old scores with him, won't you? Elder Fan laughed. Young lady, as an elder, I shouldn't show my face in public and cause trouble for the younger generation. It's embarrassing for me. But, as a grandfather, I only have one grandson. If I ignore him, he's going to get himself killed sooner or later. In that case, Elder Fan, what do you want? Tang Ning asked playfully. How do you want me to promise you? Haven't you been filming a sci-fi film recently? How about this, I'll personally invest in your film as an investor. I'm sure that with more money, you'll be able to produce better post-production. That way, even if we have a conflict of interest, we'll be bound together for good and for bad. That way, I'll be able to relax, Elder Fan suggested. But, after hearing this, Tang Ning suddenly wanted to laugh. Elder Fan, are you joking? I'm being serious. No, you must be joking. Let's not talk about whether or not superstar media lacks money. Even if I had to give up on filming this film, I wouldn't let someone with a background like you invest in my film, Tang Ning said straightforwardly. That's my bottom line. After hearing Tang Ning's words, Elder Fan was a little surprised. He had always believed that prostitutes were heartless and actors were unjust. But, when it came to Tang Ning, it seemed, someone that walked the dark side was more despicable and hateful than these two types of people. I'm currently running a legitimate business. But, my foundation is still a pile of bones. The two men continued to stare at each other, neither willing to give in to the other. It was obvious that Elder Fan was also restraining himself. After all, the person sitting in front of him was a woman and a pregnant woman. No matter how despicable he was, he wouldn't do anything to a vulnerable person. You really have guts. So what you're saying is that you're choosing to perish together with us? Elder Fan asked as he glanced at Tangning. I simply don't understand. Investing in your film won't do you any harm, my film can only be pure. I can't accept any stains. Otherwise, I would be letting down Xiao Sr., rather than wasting so much time on me. Why don't you take care of your grandson and make sure he never appears in front of me again? I can't guarantee anything else, but as long as he doesn't take the initiative, I definitely won't stand out and say a word. This was probably the biggest concession Tangning could make. Actually, Tangning could tell that Elder Tang did not have any ill intentions towards her. He simply wanted to make a deal. However, she really couldn't agree with Grandpa Sheng's suggestion. Grandfather Fan took a deep breath. He had never seen such a stubborn girl. He had to admit that this child had courage and tenacity. After all, there weren't many people like her nowadays. Since that was the case, he didn't plan to make things difficult for him. This old man hopes that you will remember what you said today. I, Tangning, have never gone back on my word. Perhaps it was because he heard from his subordinates that Elder Fan and Tangning were currently meeting. President Fan returned home early and found a place to meet. He originally thought that Elder Fan was going to put Tangning in her place. But, who would have thought, the person that was convinced was actually Elder Fan. After Tangning left, President Fan immediately ran over to support Elder Fan. Grandfather, how did the discussion go? As long as you don't cause trouble for her, she can't be bothered to deal with your trivial matters. From today onwards, you better stay away from her. After saying this, Elder Fan boarded his car and left. Obviously, Elder Fan did not have a bad temper towards Tangning. In fact, the two could be said to be birds of a feather. Elder Fan knew that Tangning didn't like the methods of the underworld. But, back in his era, this was the only way to survive. After all, one's birth was not something that one could choose. Some people were born in such a difficult environment. Plus, he was used to seeing people suck up to those in power, so it was rare for him to meet someone that could speak the truth. In fact, Elder Fan even felt that Tangning was rare. Afterwards, after Grandfather Fan left the cafe, President Fan grabbed onto the person beside him and asked, "What did Grandfather say to Tangning?" "Tangning, that slut, actually insulted Elder Fan," the bodyguard replied. Hearing this, President Fan did not say a word. But, the hatred in his heart deepened. He didn't even dare to say anything harsh to Elder Fan, yet Tangning dared to insult him. One day, I'm going to teach her a lesson. A little later, Mo Ting found out that Tangning had been asked to leave, even though she told the driver to keep it a secret. As soon as Tangning returned home, Mo Ting immediately pulled her into his embrace and scanned her from head to toe to make sure she wasn't underweight. "Why didn't you tell me? I didn't lose out." "If you were to lose out, would it be too late?" Mo Ting lectured. "You knew that you couldn't hide it from me. If I found out, I would only be more worried. Or, did you think that I didn't send enough bodyguards?" Tangning breathed in Mo Ting's scent. She didn't know why, but she was completely mesmerized by it. If an enemy wants to deal with you, it's impossible to defend or avoid them. No matter how many preparations you make and how much protection you put in, as long as you observe them, they will still find an opportunity. "What did he say to you?" Tangning explained Elder Fan's suggestion to Mo Ting. After hearing this, Mo Ting felt that the Fan family's existence was, in a way, a threat to Tangning's safety. "Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking without saying a word," Tangning said as she lifted her head and looked at Mo Ting. The Fan family may be annoying, but they have a solid foundation. If you want to deal with them, it will take a lot of effort. I don't want you to waste your energy on them. Above all, the child in my stomach is about to be born. I don't want to cause unnecessary trouble." Mo Ting looked at Tangning's round stomach and gently ran his hand over it. After all, this was their daughter. Behind the couple, the little rascal, Mo Zichen, climbed onto the sofa and turned on the television. Tangning turned around and glanced at Mo Zichen. This unsmiling little son of hers was going to be difficult to deal with when he grew up. Although Tang Ning said this, Mo Ting couldn't help but be cautious at all times. He even wanted to issue a stern warning to Old Man Fan. Of course, this was after Tang Ning fell asleep. Chapter 980. Grandfather Fan had no idea how Mo Ting managed to get his contact details. After all, not many people knew his personal phone number. It was clear to see that Mo Ting's capabilities couldn't be underestimated. Since President Mo has personally called me, it must be because I invited your wife to have tea with me today. Elder Mo did not beat around the bush as he said straightforwardly. I heard that Elder Fan is looking for someone to work with. My wife's small business dealings shouldn't catch your eye. Why don't you do business with me? As soon as Grandfather Fan heard Mo Ting's words, he knew it was hard for him to resist. This was obviously a warning. A woman's world is pure and beautiful. I hope to maintain her innocence. There are some things that men should resolve in private. Don't bring it up in public. That way, no one will feel good. What do you think, Elder Fan? Since President Mo has spoken, what else can an old bag of bones say? I'm too tired to play around anymore. This world belongs to you youngsters. Mo Ting did not say another word as he hung up the phone. However, President Fan happened to be right next to Grandfather Fan. Although Grandfather Fan did not say anything, after being humiliated by Tang Ning in the morning and being bullied by Mo Ting at night, President Fan's temper was irritable. So, he directly said to the old man, "Why do you have to endure it? It's not like our family can't win. Who do you think you are? Did you think that Mo Ting managed to create Hai Rui by using violence to control violence? Rascal, grow up. Mo Ting's methods are much scarier than yours." I'm curious to see what he's capable of, President Fan scoffed. President Fan scoffed in disdain. If he was really that scary, why would he let a woman step all over him? That's called spoiling his wife. Although Grandfather Fan didn't agree with spoiling a woman to the point where she was out of control, he did not object. Either way, I don't believe it. Grandfather, get some rest. After speaking, President Fan left Grandfather Fan's room. Although Mo Ting's image in the public was stable and no one dared to provoke him, it could still be a bubble that would burst with a single pop. So, Grandfather Fan was curious to see how powerful Mo Ting was. However, President Fan did not need to make the first move. After all, Mo Ting no longer had any tolerance for President Fan. In the dead of night, he gave Lu Che a call. "There are some things I need you to do right now." Unknowingly, Tang Ning seemed to have left the industry for a long time. Superstar Media's artists were currently shining brightly. Xing Lan worked harder than anyone else. She won multiple Golden Melody Awards in one go and her name appeared on practically every new song chart. In fact, she was even invited to write and perform the closing theme for a film and television production. When it came to the new diva of the music industry, whenever Xing Lan was mentioned, almost everyone would think of Tang Ning. Meanwhile, Luo Sheng and Luo Yinghong continued to advance by leaps and bounds in their respective fields. Meanwhile, another veteran returned to the film and television industry. Superstar Media's trader, Xia Hanmo. She actually managed to return to the entertainment industry with the help of her sugar daddy. Although her reputation in the industry was pretty much gone by now, she was still loved by the production team for bringing money into the production and acting in a supporting role. Who wouldn't want such a good deal? Coincidentally, Xia Hanmo's new film was to act as a supporting role for Luo Sheng. But, Luo Sheng despised people like Xia Hanmo who would burn bridges after crossing the river. In fact, he had expressed his disgust towards Xia Hanmo on multiple occasions. But, now that Xia Hanmo had returned to the industry, she was like a completely different person from the innocent person she used to be. In private, she would wear a lot of makeup and smoke. Luo Sheng had seen her twice, but each time, he simply furrowed his brows and left. But, the last time, Xia Hanmo actually smoked in front of him. I don't think you need to continue acting. Go home and smoke. After all, you have someone to support you at home. Everyone looked at each other awkwardly, but Xia Hanmo didn't care. It seemed, she was always looking down on herself. I've let Tangning down. It's only right for you to treat me like this. The person you should be letting down is Lin Qian, Luo Sheng emphasized. I don't know what kind of attitude you had when you came to the audition, but I'm sure you've already heard that I am the male lead of this film. You really shouldn't have appeared in front of me, Luo Sheng. It's time to let this matter go. Afterwards, Luo Sheng mentioned Xia Hanmo's situation to Long Jia, but Long Jia shrugged her shoulders in disdain. Just focus on filming. Don't let your emotions get to you. Don't let others get hold of you. It's not worth it for someone like her. I understand, Long Jia. I will try my best to control myself. Luo Sheng felt wronged because he was working with someone that he knew had a questionable character. Was Xia Hanmo particularly bad? Not at all. It was because she wasn't completely bad enough that people looked down on her when she acted pretentiously. It didn't take long for Tangning to find out that the two were working together. But, she had nothing to say about Xia Hanmo. A few days later, Tangning received a wedding invitation. She was very surprised that this person could actually remember her. It was Trendy Queen, the editor of TQ magazine, Lin Weisun, was getting married. Along with the wedding invitation was the October cover of TQ magazine. As Tangning looked at herself on the cover, she felt that it had been a long time since she last felt this way. He was a friend of a gentleman. Although the relationship between them was as indifferent as water, he had helped her. She would never forget this. I heard this is his second marriage. You're a gossipy person, Tangning said. It's been a long time since I've stepped foot into the fashion industry. In that case, you must attend this wedding. Mo Ting smiled as he hugged Tangning. Actually, it's only right. Back then, Lin Weisun did indeed speak up for you on many occasions. Tangning nodded her head. However, she had no idea that it was this very occasion that almost caused her to get into an accident. In reality, the reason why Lin Weisun invited Tangning, apart from letting her witness his happiness, was because he knew that she had recently been researching sci-fi films. Coincidentally, he had a friend that was extremely professional in sci-fi. So, he thought he might introduce him to her and help her out. His intentions were good, but the wedding was bound to be attended by a lot of people from the industry. Sometimes, the entertainment industry may seem big, but in reality, apart from newcomers that were constantly making their debut, almost everyone knew each other. Even if they didn't know each other, they were at least familiar with each other. After all, they were all faces that liked to appear on the media. This included President Fan. Chapter 981. Lin Weisun's wedding was extremely grand and many famous people from the industry would be attending. Tangning may not have attracted the most attention, but her presence was definitely the highlight of the wedding. However, the public had no idea how deep the feud between her and President Fan was. So, when the two of them showed up at the same time, no one expected a war to break out. Soon, Lin Weisun's wedding was held at the biggest church in Beijing. Plenty of celebrities and models showed up one after another. On that day, in order to cater to Lin Weisun's wedding, Tangning wore a long, cream-colored dress. Although she was already 7 to 8 months pregnant, the rest of her body was still the same as before. So, her figure was still as sexy as ever. On this day, even President Mo was dressed in a tailored black handmade suit, making him look even more dignified. When the couple stood together, it was bound to cause a commotion. Soon, the couple arrived at the church under Lu Che's escort. At this time, the outside of the church was already filled with stars. Tangning barely recognized any of the new faces. Regardless of which industry they were from, they didn't know what kind of achievements they had achieved. But, even though she didn't look at them, they still looked at her with respect. Tangning, this was Tangning they were talking about. She doesn't have many years left. Let's just wait and see. The industry is full of energy. It won't be long before no one knows who she is, an artist said to the person next to her. Right now, they're simply relying on superstar media to leech off a little bit of popularity. No matter how bad she is, she's still been famous longer than you, a cold voice suddenly sounded from behind the woman. The young artist turned around and saw Xia Hanmo. She suddenly laughed. Why are you still speaking up for Tangning? If I were you, I would expose all of Tangning's scandals to vent my anger. I'm not like you, Xia Hanmo replied straightforwardly. Before the woman could respond, she continued, at least, I'm famous when it comes to Haehong. What about you? No one knows what his name is now, right? Xia Hanmo continued to protect Tangning, even though she had already lost superstar media. But, as long as she was around, she would do her best to protect Tangning's reputation. Just you wait. Xia Hanmo now felt that there was nothing to be concerned about. After all, with the financial backer behind her, she had the right to speak. At the very least, it was more than enough to deal with a small fry like this. Soon, the small-time artist stood up from her seat. Of course, at an event like this, with so many guests present and the fact that they were all from the industry, it was normal for her to play some tricks on her opponent. The person who quarreled with Xia Hanmo was one such person. After leaving her seat, she didn't go to the washroom. Instead, she found a waiter and told him some things, using some despicable methods. She wanted to see how Xia Hanmo, who had embarrassed herself, was going to stick up for Tangning. Of course, since it was a place where artists gathered, it meant that, like any other event, people would chase after fame and fortune. So, Lin Weisun wasn't surprised. Seeing him leading his bride around the newly rich, Tangning couldn't help but feel a little touched. Tangning, President Mo. You're here. Lin Weisun noticed Tangning had a big belly and it was hard for her to walk around, so he led his bride over to them. The bride looked very young, she looked to be in her early 20s. But, Tangning could tell that Lin Weisun cared a lot about her. Since you invited me, I naturally had to come, Tangning said to Lin Weisun as she stood up under Mo Ting's protection. You have no idea how many people here want to see you. I bet they want to see what kind of news I'm going to bring, Tangning laughed in self-ridicule. By the way, I have something important to tell you today. Lin Weisun pulled out a business card from his pocket and handed it to Tangning. I want to introduce you to this person. He is also very interested in sci-fi and has some success. I think he might be able to help you. Tangning received the business card and smiled after taking a glance at it. It must be hard for you to remember to help me on your wedding day. After all, out of all the artists that I've worked with, you are the one that I like the most. The TQ magazine that you shot in the past is still hanging on the company's billboards because I want to show all the models what a real model is. I have always remembered your kindness, Tangning replied. At this time, Lin Weisun suddenly said to Tangning, if I have something that I need your help with, I will definitely ask you for help. Tangning maintained her smile. She knew Lin Weisun's words meant that he had something to ask of her. Of course, since Lin Weisun had helped her in the past, it was only right for her to return the favor. But, for some reason, Tangning suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Mo Ting seemed to see through her thoughts as he said, people change. Or perhaps, you've never seen the other person clearly. Forget it, I'll consider it as returning the favor. So, the wedding banquet was not as simple as it seemed. Tangning originally thought that Lin Weisun simply wanted them to catch up. You're not guarded against people you know. Lin Weisun and his bride continued to greet the guests, but he kept moving closer to Tangning and Mo Ting. So, Tangning overheard a few things that made her feel even more uncomfortable. I originally heard that editor Lin and Tangning were close, but I never expected it to be true. Apart from superstar media, the only person that has such a close relationship with Tangning is you. Hearing these words from the guests, Tangning's expression turned cold. It turned out, Lin Weisun was using her current status to raise his own status. Back then, your status wasn't high and you were just a small model. He helped you out of love. But, today, you are the most eye-catching person in the entertainment industry, so he naturally wants to suck up to you. Your heart is still the same as before and you haven't realized that everything has changed. But, there are some things that are no longer the same. After hearing Mo Ting's explanation, Tungning nodded her head. I understand. I just can't accept it all at once. If you really don't like it, you can always find an excuse to leave. Forget it. Since I've already given him face, I might as well give him enough. If worse comes to worst, I'll just avoid contact with him from now on, Tungning replied. Just before the wedding, there were already so many undercurrents. So, what would happen to the ball after the ceremony? Actually, Lin Weisun couldn't be blamed for this. After all, this was something that was ingrained in him. He always sought benefits and avoided harm. Just as Tungning calmed herself down, someone in the crowd yelled, "Is this a striptease?" Chapter 982. Who was the main character? It was Xia Hanmo. Tungning had no idea that Xia Hanmo had fallen into a trap and had been drugged. All she knew was, as the crowd moved, she spotted President Fan sitting to one side chatting with a few directors. As their eyes met, a fire burned within them. It didn't take long before Tungning spotted a red-faced Xia Hanmo standing up from her seat and fiddling with her clothes. Her blue dress couldn't withstand her tearing as one of the straps had already fallen off. But, she wasn't wearing any underwear. The sight of her naked body caused an uproar in the crowd. After all, they were both artists. So, when they saw such an embarrassing scene, they naturally backed away, afraid that they would get involved with Xia Hanmo. But, what made everyone even more curious was, as Xia Hanmo was an ex-artist of Superstar Media and as Tungning's ex-boss, wouldn't she want to help? Let's go have a look, Tungning said to Mo Ting after confirming who it was. Meanwhile, Mo Ting asked Lu Che to remove his jacket and covered Xia Hanmo up. Even so, Xia Hanmo couldn't help but let out a moan. She had completely lost face in front of everyone. Soon, Tungning arrived in the middle of the crowd and saw Lu Che pour ice water on Xia Hanmo. Luckily, the poison wasn't strong and didn't go deep. Because of the cold water, Xia Hanmo woke up and realized that her clothes were in disarray. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that Xia Hanmo had fallen into someone else's trap. But, how was Xia Hanmo supposed to face others from now on? As Lin Weisun and his bride saw the scene, his face turned pale. He immediately asked, "Who did this? How dare they bully me, Lin Weisun's wedding?" As the host, it wouldn't be right if he didn't get justice for Xia Hanmo, plus, Xia Hanmo used to be a part of Superstar Media. No matter what, he had to give her an explanation. Xia Hanmo was embarrassed and wanted to leave the wedding. But, at this time, Tungning grabbed onto her wrist and asked, "What happened? Did Tungning make a move? Didn't she say that Xia Hanmo no longer had anything to do with Superstar Media?" Xia Hanmo looked at Tungning as tears began to roll down her cheeks. Did Tungning still care about her? Based on my relationship with editor Lin, I'm sure he won't let this matter go unresolved. There's still some time until the wedding, so I'm sure editor Lin will agree to me finding the culprit. Otherwise, I'm afraid he won't be happy today. Since Lin Weisun was purposely trying to get close to Tungning, she decided to play along. She was sure Lin Weisun wouldn't be able to say anything about it. Sure enough, Lin Weisun nodded. Indeed. Destroying someone else's innocence is a serious matter. After hearing Lin Weisun's words, Tungning turned to Xia Hanmo and asked, "What exactly happened?" Xia Hanmo did not say a word. She simply looked at the actress that she had just argued with. Tungning understood what she meant as she looked at the female artist. "It has nothing to do with me. Although I was arguing with you just now, it doesn't mean that I would do such a despicable thing. It really wasn't me, Plus, even if you suspect me, you need to show me evidence. Although I hate Xia Hanmo, all I did was tell the waiter to teach her a little lesson. All I did was tamper with her stool and make a fool of herself. How could I have predicted that I would argue with her and then prepare some medicine for her? Tang Ning could tell that the female artist wasn't lying. Otherwise, she would have felt guilty when Xia Hanmo got into an accident a moment ago. So, Tang Ning's gaze naturally fell on President Fan. At this moment, he had an expression that said, "Let's see how you're going to clean up this mess." It seemed, President Fan was planning to fight with her until the end. The public had already heard about how amazing Tang Ning was and how amazing her skills were. So, it was time for her to figure out a way to find the culprit. Everyone looked at Tang Ning and waited for her to continue. But, she simply looked at Xia Hanmo and said, "Originally, you had nothing to do with Superstar Media, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. I believe that the female artist that you argued with isn't the culprit that drugged you. So, go wash yourself first and sit beside me. We'll settle this score after the ceremony." Originally, Xia Hanmo shouldn't have continued to stay at the wedding after the humiliation she had suffered. After all, she was bound to become a laughing stock. But, sitting beside Tang Ning was a completely different situation. After all, no one dared to say that Tang Ning was protecting someone. The onlookers were curious. Was Tang Ning planning to take Xia Hanmo back with her? Xia Hanmo's eyes turned red as she temporarily left the venue under Lu Che's protection. Meanwhile, Tang Ning and Mo Ting returned to their original positions. However, the couple's gaze was fixed on President Fan not too far away. It seems the jerk made preparations beforehand. It doesn't matter. Let's see what else he wants to do. Of course, most importantly, the onlookers wanted to know how Tang Ning was going to settle the score. Lin Weisun quickly stepped forward with his bride and apologized. "I never expected something like this to happen, it's not your fault. Plus, Xia Hanmo isn't a part of Superstar Media," Tang Ning reminded Lin Weisun calmly. Tang Ning reminded Lin Weisun calmly, "Even if it was someone else, I would still make a move. Forget it. Let's move on from this unhappy incident. The wedding is about to start, so I'm going to invite everyone to the ceremony." Tang Ning looked at President Fan. Not too far away, President Fan raised his glass of red wine towards her. But, he had no idea that Tang Ning loved to give him an eye for an eye. So, before the ceremony started, President Mo gave Lu Che a phone call while Lu Che and Xia Hanmo were away. There were some things that needed to be paid back after doing something. It didn't take long before Xia Hanmo was arranged to sit beside Tang Ning. However, compared to before, she no longer felt that she deserved to sit beside Tang Ning. "Tang Ning, I'm not helping you because I want to have anything to do with you. I'm simply worried that you may have become my scapegoat. Someone wants to deal with me." After hearing this, although Xia Hanmo was disappointed, she also understood what Tang Ning meant. You have such a high status in the industry, there are bound to be people that are jealous of you. From now on, when you go out on your own, don't randomly eat or drink. You are an artist, not an ordinary person. If you don't even take precautions, then you are still the same Xia Hanmo. Tang Ning's words were a little harsh as she lectured Xia Hanmo. Can you tell me who wants to harm you? Chapter 983. You don't need to know that. Tang Ning had no intention of dragging Xia Hanmo into her feud with President Fan. You and I don't owe each other anything. You don't need to be shackled anymore. Since you found a new backer, you should walk your own path. Xia Hanmo did not respond. To be exact, at this moment, she already had a clear answer in her heart. Although she was no longer a part of Superstar Media, in her heart, she would always be a part of it. Plus, wasn't the scene that just happened embarrassing enough? With her current identity and her current situation, she only felt that her existence in this world was really unnecessary. After Tang Ning's harsh words, the couple did not say another word. Everyone in the venue was quietly watching the ceremony. At this time, Tangning glanced at President Fan from time to time. She wanted to know what the jerk was up to. Had he already dealt with his ex-wife? The ceremony only lasted for a short 10 minutes. After it was over, it was time for lunch. But Tangning did not move at all. Was she planning to let go of the matter? Soon, Lin Weisan and his bride began toasting the guests. The first place he approached was in front of Tangning and Mo Ting. Lin Weisan was dressed in a white tuxedo and holding a glass of champagne in his hand. As soon as Tangning stood up, he asked, "Tangning, do you like talented dancers? From what editor Lin says, you have a suitable candidate that you want to discuss with me." "Indeed, my wife really likes dancing. But I can't trust her anywhere, so I thought of you," Lin Weisan said as he carried his bride. "I'm sure, with Superstar Media's capabilities, this shouldn't be a problem. She doesn't need to be an artist. She simply needs to learn from you." As expected, Tangning's lips curved upwards. The Lin Weisan that once sided with her was no exception now that he was pleading for the people around him. Tangning glanced at the bride. Although she didn't like her, she still nodded her head. "That's not difficult. But, let me make it clear first, I will be very strict with her. I trust you." Lin Weisan knew that Tangning couldn't reject him. Not only because of the occasion, but also because he had used the kindness that Tangning had shown him in the past. Tangning didn't like owing people, so she tried her best to repay them. "I'm really sorry about what happened to Miss Xia just now." Lin Weisan got a satisfactory answer and turned to look at Xia Hanmo. "It must have made you uncomfortable, right?" "Of course she's embarrassed," Tangning replied. "How dare she act so recklessly in your territory? From what you're saying, you know who the murderer behind this is?" Tangning gestured to President Fan with her chin. After seeing this, Lin Weisan nodded his head. "I've heard about the grudge between the two of you, but I never expected it to be so serious. Besides, Hanmo is no longer a part of Superstar Media, so why would he deliberately make things difficult for her? Not too long ago, he made things difficult for Lin Qian. I don't think he can hurt me, so he thought hurting the people around me would be a good way to deal a blow to my confidence. I'll keep an eye out for you." "Thank you," Tangning replied politely. Tangning replied politely to Lin Weisan. However, there was a hint of distance in her voice. "However, I also have a favor that I need your help with." "Huh?" Afterwards, Lin Weisan left with his bride. Meanwhile, Tangning was filled with anticipation for what was about to happen. Did President Fan make things difficult for Lin Qian? Xia Hanmo asked. Tangning's expression darkened, but she did not say a word. But it didn't take long before President Fan returned with a wine glass in his hand. His actions were frivolous and he had a look of disdain on his face. Was the little game just now fun? As soon as Xia Hanmo heard this, she stood up and threw a slap at President Fan. However, President Fan grabbed onto her wrist. "Miss Xia, watch your words. Your sugar daddy is a good friend of mine. Aren't you afraid that your reputation will be ruined tomorrow?" Indeed, they were birds of a feather. "From the looks of it, President Fan has already dealt with your ex-wife?" Tangning asked with a smile. "By the way, aren't you worried that I've found out about your secrets?" "Tangning, you're just a wild monkey that only knows how to make a few noises. But, what can you possibly do to me? Really?" Tangning looked at President Fan's face that was slowly turning red and said in a frivolous tone, "Are you sure you don't want to put out the fire?" President Fan felt a little powerless. Especially his body, it felt especially empty. Soon, he realized the reason. But, he couldn't figure out where he had been drugged. Even so, he did not suspect Lin Weisan. Afterwards, President Fan fell to the ground and began to tear at his clothes as he moaned in pain. He was in a much more disgusting state than Xia Hanmo. After all, he wasn't as pretty as Xia Hanmo and didn't have a good body. So, for a man like him to fall to the ground, it would simply be an oily sight. Oh God, what's happening now? Isn't that President Fan? Has he also been? President Fan lay on the ground with his clothes in tatters. Most importantly, he grabbed onto the female artist next to him and held her down as he tried to take advantage of her. Hey, look, it looks like something fell out of President Fan's pocket. Is this the drug? Someone looked at the packaging of the drug and began to guess. That's obviously the drug. Could it be that President Fan was the one that drugged Xia Hanmo? Or did he accidentally ingest the drug that he brought with him? If that's the case, then he's really embarrassing. President Fan's face turned red as he rolled around on the ground. In the end, Lin Weisun felt that it was too embarrassing, so he called security to clear President Fan from the scene. At this time, Xia Hanmo stepped out and said, I don't even know this President Fan. I don't think he did it on purpose. It's not a good idea to ask him to leave. After all, it's Editor Lin's wedding. Why don't we get someone to bring him some ice water to wake him up? How could the artists miss out on a show like this? They quickly pulled out their phones to record the scene, even though it was too painful to look at. Lin Weisun felt that Xia Hanmo's words made sense, so he asked someone to bring him some ice water. Originally, he was going to use it to wipe President Fan's face, but Xia Hanmo ended up pouring it all down his face. As a result, everyone realized that she did it on purpose. Chapter 984. Hurry up and help President Fan up, Lin Weisun said to the security guards. Escort President Fan home safely. After being hit by the cold water, President Fan sobered up a little. With the help of the security guards, he stood up and pointed at Xia Hanmo with a trembling finger. You will definitely pay for everything you've done today. Xia Hanmo did not back down. I'll be waiting. Tang Ning looked at the two men and shook her head. After President Fan left, she said to Xia Hanmo, this is my business, I don't need you to get involved. Who do you think you are? Xia Hanmo was stunned. You no longer have anything to do with Superstar Media. Stop interfering with my business with Lin Qian. That jerk isn't someone you can afford to offend. Remember, next time you see him, stay away from him. It has nothing to do with you. I saw that you were having a good time venting your anger. In that case, you don't need to sit next to me anymore. Xia Hanmo did not say a word as she quietly returned to her seat. She knew that no matter what she said or did, she would never be able to go back to how she was before. She had already been kicked out of Superstar Media. Ting, you need to watch out for President Fan's revenge on Xia Hanmo. Standing behind Tang Ning, Mo Ting nodded his head. Don't worry, I'll get Lu Che to make arrangements when we get back. Although she's no longer a part of Superstar Media, I don't want anything to happen to her. They had been married for so long, Mo Ting naturally understood what Tang Ning was thinking. She didn't want to implicate Xia Hanmo. I merely embarrassed the jerk today. But, it seems, he's determined to keep pestering me. Mo Ting did not say a word because he had already made plans in secret. However, some things needed time. Soon, the wedding banquet returned to normal. After lunch, it was time for the ball. As a pregnant woman, Tang Ning naturally didn't have the right to dance. So, she had no choice but to sit to one side with Mo Ting. It was, after all, a gathering of the industry, so there were plenty of people that could sing and dance. Especially Lin Weisun's bride. Indeed, just as he had said, she could dance at her fingertips. She was very talented in dancing. Are you really planning to keep that woman under Superstar Media? Didn't you hear? Lin Weisun personally asked me, how could I refuse? As you can see, the talent show she put on just now was all for me to see. She wanted me to make her famous. I do need to repay Lin Weisun's kindness, but you don't like this girl. Mr. Mo, don't tell me you can read my mind. Tang Ning laughed. Do you know what I'm thinking? Mo Ting pinched the tip of Tang Ning's nose. Did she even need to think about something like this? Tang Ning scanned her surroundings and realized Xia Hanmo was nowhere to be seen. She originally thought she had left early because of work. But, in the end, Tangning had no idea where she had been led to. Everyone sang and danced at the open-air wedding, and it was very lively. But just as everyone was singing excitedly, they suddenly heard a scream. With a bang, someone fell from a tall building and landed on the lawn. Then, someone confirmed the person's identity. "It's Xia Hanmo, it's Xia Hanmo." As soon as she heard Xia Hanmo's name, Tangning immediately walked over to the crowd with Mo Ting's help. As soon as she saw Xia Hanmo lying on the ground with her nose and mouth covered in blood, she immediately knelt down in front of her. "Hanmo." Xia Hanmo's body twitched as she pointed to the highest floor, the fifth floor, the fifth floor. Tangning understood what she meant. Xia Hanmo had fallen from the fifth floor. Meanwhile, Mo Ting, who was standing behind Tangning, had already pulled out his phone to call the police and the ambulance. "Tangning. President Fan is on the fifth floor. He pushed me." Hadn't President Fan been sent home? And, when did she go to the hotel? Ning, everyone has their own ending. I think this is the best ending for me." After speaking, Xia Hanmo grabbed onto Tangning's hand tightly. "Will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? Stop talking. As long as you survive, I will forgive you," Tangning said as she covered Xia Hanmo's mouth. "As long as you survive." Xia Hanmo's face was covered in blood. Hearing Tangning's words, she finally let out a laugh. But, Tangning was in extreme pain. As she watched Xia Hanmo faint, Tangning clenched her fists tightly. She felt that she had been too soft-hearted when it came to President Fan's matter. She had allowed the jerk to hurt her own family time and time again. Mo Ting understood Tangning's pain, so he quickly wrapped his arms around her fists. "Don't worry, I've already made arrangements. No, I will personally make him suffer a fate worse than death." It didn't take long before the police arrived at the scene, followed by an ambulance. While the police investigated the scene, Xia Hanmo was sent to the nearest hospital for emergency treatment. Tangning and Mo Ting followed the ambulance to the hospital. For some reason, at this moment, it felt like all their grudges had been written off. Xia Hanmo was indeed in the wrong, but did she not? Because of this, Tangning began to blame herself. Especially after arriving at the hospital and seeing the words "operation," she sat on a stool calmly. But, it didn't take long before Mo Ting noticed a bloodstain underneath Tangning's dress, and, the bloodstain was between her legs. Obviously, it wasn't Xia Hanmo's. Doctor. Tangning was then sent to the OB/GYN department. The medical staff examined Tangning and the baby. After seeing Tangning's condition, the doctor shook her head. "You are pregnant, so you need to maintain a stable and happy mood. This sudden change in mood is too damaging for the baby. The mother needs to rest in bed for at least half a month. Plus, she can't have any emotional fluctuations." As soon as Tangning woke up and heard the doctor's instructions, she lifted her head and looked at Mo Ting. "How is Xia Hanmo?" "She has successfully survived the critical period," Mo Ting replied as he sat by her bedside. "From now on, you don't need to worry about anything. Leave everything to me. Ting, listen to me. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty for taking care of you like this, okay?" Tangning understood how serious Mo Ting was, so she nodded her head. "From today onwards, go home and get some rest. I'll take care of everything." Tangning could sense that President Mo was angry. In fact, he was very, very angry. "Ting, don't let that jerk off," Tangning pleaded as she held on to Mo Ting's hand. However, Mo Ting only replied with 4 words, "As you wish." Chapter 985. Xia Hanmo made it through the critical period and her life was temporarily out of danger. But, she did not wake up as she lay peacefully in the ICU. As Tangning lay in bed, Long Jia and Lin Qian came to visit. After hearing the entire story, they couldn't help but sigh. Has President Fan crossed boss's bottom line? Why did Xia Hanmo fall from the building? Did President Fan do something to her? Tang Ning shook her head, indicating that she didn't understand the situation at the time. Ning Jia is already in this state. Don't ask her any more questions. If President Mo finds out, even I won't be able to save you, Lin Qian quickly interrupted after seeing Long Jia asking so many questions. Seeing Long Jia had so many questions, Lin Qian quickly interrupted, let Ning Jia rest. Tang Ning's mind was filled with images of Xia Hanmo falling from the building. Xia Hanmo was covered in blood as she asked Tang Ning if she should forgive her. Should she forgive her? What right did she have to forgive Xia Hanmo? If she wasn't so soft-hearted and allowed President Fan to get his way over and over again, things would not have turned out this way. Right now, rumors are everywhere that Xia Hanmo was first drugged and then she fell from the building. This is enough for the public to imagine. Do you still want to continue? Lin Qian asked as she pulled out her phone. Hearing Lin Qian's warning, Long Jia nodded her head, I'm just being nosy. Does that mean President Mo has gone to deal with this matter? Tang Ning nodded her head gently. President Fan is such a disgusting person. If I were him, I wouldn't know what disgusting way to deal with him. But, I believe boss has a way to make him suffer. In order to make a person suffer, you must first figure out what this person likes the most, what he wants the most, and what he cares about the most. President Fan doted on his daughter, but he didn't only have one daughter. This jerk had many lovers and of course, he had even more children. Apart from his ex-wife, all of his women were willing to follow him and they all knew of each other's existence. So, what did he have to be afraid of when faced with a man that was like a demon? He only had one weakness, and that was his sister. The night after Xia Hanmo's incident, President Fan went straight to his sister's house to hide for a while. Although he couldn't guarantee that Xia Hanmo would die, it wasn't too far off. Plus, the police had no leads yet, so he pretended that nothing had happened. Even if Xia Hanmo woke up and pointed the finger at him, he still had a way to escape. Didn't he just teach an insensible little artist a lesson? Was there a need for the whole world to hype up this news? On the other hand, Superstar Media and Hai Rui had yet to make a move. So, President Fan sneered, I've already said that the slut is only strong on the outside, but no one believes me. I'm teaching her artist a lesson, but she can't do anything about it. Brother 2, you can't stay at my place. You have so many homes, why don't you just go back to one? President Fan's sister couldn't help but nag. Sis, you're my only relative now. Grandpa's always on my side. If I'm not here, where should I go? Alright, you think I don't know you? What trouble did you get into this time? President Fan's sister was a typical rich madam. Especially after she married her husband and became a shareholder of Hai Rui, she had always doted on her younger brother. Sis, I've avenged brother-in-law. While the two were talking, President Fan's brother-in-law entered the house. As soon as he saw the siblings whispering to each other, he approached them with an unclear expression on his face. It's about time. Why are you still wasting time with him? The man asked. President Fan's sister froze for a moment before she said awkwardly, We've been siblings for so many years, I can't bear to part with him. What's wrong? Are you going somewhere far away? President Fan asked his brother-in-law as he ate. Brother, actually. I've already sold the things that you asked me to keep safe for you. President Fan's sister couldn't bear to look at him like this, but she still said it out loud. What do you mean? President Fan was still unaware of the situation. Didn't you kill someone? Anyway, you don't need to go to jail. President Fan's sister stood up guiltily from the dining table. So, I hired a lawyer to handle it. No, sis, what are you trying to say? What's wrong? What am I trying to say? Don't you understand? Your sister is trying to distance herself from a murderer like you, the man yelled. Who are you calling a murderer? President Fan roared. Brother-in-law, don't forget that we're in the same boat. Who's in the same boat as you? The man asked as he shielded the woman behind him. When it comes to a jerk like you, your sister and I should stay as far away from you as possible. Brother-in-law, you're burning the bridge after crossing the river. Don't you know how I've treated you? How could you treat me like this? Okay, then explain to me what happened. President Mo has already contacted me about Xia Hanmo. Are you sure you didn't push her off the cliff? After hearing his brother-in-law's words, President Fan finally understood what was going on. You've been bribed by Mo Ting, haven't you? The man couldn't be bothered talking to him, so he turned to the people outside and said, "Come in." A moment later, a few bodyguards entered the living room and grabbed President Fan. They then placed a bag over his head and tied a rope around his body before dragging him up to the top floor of the villa. "What are you doing?" No one responded. Plus, he couldn't see anything. All he could feel was a cold breeze blowing against his face. Before he could finish his sentence, President Fan was pushed off the roof. He couldn't see a thing. All he could feel was his body rapidly falling. Although 4 floors wasn't a tall building, it was still frightening. But, just as he thought he was about to get seriously injured, his body was suddenly restrained. President Fan was so scared that he almost peed his pants. As he was pulled up, his body felt weak. What are you doing?" "We're going to make you feel Xia Hanmo's pain," the bodyguards replied. Then, they brought President Fan back to the living room of the villa and removed his mask. At this time, a tall figure entered the living room. It was Mo Ting. He didn't like wearing a black suit because it looked too solemn. But today, he couldn't help but put it on, like he was paying respects to someone. "So it was you, Mo Ting. You played your cards well," President Fan sneered. President Fan sneered. He still had a lingering fear from what had just happened. The feeling of being able to see the Grim Reaper was too vivid. Chapter 986. Mo Ting did not say a word as he sat down on the sofa and said to President Fan, "I'm sure this feeling is enough to make you remember it. Sis, why did you pour him tea? Don't you know how he treated me just now?" President Fan still didn't understand his sister's actions. At this time, Mo Ting asked, "Where's the stuff?" President Fan's sister looked at her brother guiltily, but she had no choice but to hand over all the information that President Fan had asked her to keep safe to Mo Ting. President Fan's eyes turned red. He was about to run over and snatch it back when Mo Ting's bodyguards stopped him. "Sis, why did you give it to him? I trusted you so much, how could you give something so important to Mo Ting? Protecting the brother of a murderer is the same as committing a crime. Why can't she give it to me?" Mo Ting asked. "Sis, I did it for your brother-in-law's sake. Don't blame me. After all, you've already done so many wrong things. You're bound to get what you deserve sooner or later." "But, I trusted you so much," President Fan yelled. "How could you betray me?" "That's right, how could she betray you so easily?" Mo Ting said as he held up the package in his hand. "But, she betrayed you. What can you do?" "Mo Ting, I simply made a small deal with them, yet you ended up being betrayed. How important do you think you are?" Mo Ting provoked President Fan. "What? Are you upset that I almost caused that slut to have a miscarriage?" Hearing this, Mo Ting glared at President Fan coldly. "I'm fine. Sorry to disappoint you. Brother, why aren't you apologizing to President Mo? Why are you so stubborn? In order to avoid a few years in prison, you should kneel down to President Mo. Are you crazy? You want me to kneel down to him?" President Fan roared. "You're both crazy. Crazy. Are you going to break down so soon? I haven't even started yet. Just now, consider it my wife's gift to you." President Fan was held down tightly by Mo Ting, so he had no way of fighting back. "Mo Ting, what do you want? Make it quick. What's the rush? It will take some time for the police to arrive." Mo Ting said as he stood up. He then turned to President Fan's sister and said, "The two of you can leave first." President Fan's sister glanced at her husband, but she did not hesitate as she quickly left the living room with her husband. Afterwards, all that was left in the living room was Mo Ting, his bodyguards and President Fan. "Based on the information in my hands, it should be enough to sentence you to death, right?" Mo Ting raised the evidence in his hands. "Mo Ting, even if I die in your hands today, just like Tang Ning said, I have a son and countless descendants. Speaking of your children." Mo Ting paused for a moment before continuing, "Don't you think out of your 7 sons, 6 of them don't look like you? You're not the only lover you have. After you go to prison, I will help you greet them." Mo Ting laughed. "Humph," President Fan snorted. "Is this all you've got?" Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply gestured for the bodyguards to apply a little more force, causing President Fan to let out a cry of pain. "His right hand is broken," the bodyguard said to Mo Ting. "You can break his left hand as well. After all, when the time comes, he'll just need to reattach it." President Fan was in a lot of pain. He originally thought that Mo Ting wouldn't resort to such underhanded methods. Who would have thought he was actually so ruthless? "I know you've been in the underworld for a long time, so you have quite a few henchmen. But, I'm sure you've already revealed most of these people in the information you have. So, your trusted aides and brothers will soon be caught in the net. I still have money. I can hire a lawyer. You can't do anything to me." "Are you referring to Dong Ying?" "But, the shareholders have already withdrawn their shares this afternoon." Mo Ting looked at President Fan in a slightly arrogant manner. This was a rare expression on his face. "This is all thanks to your sister. As soon as she says that her brother is a murderer, the shareholders are so scared that they immediately hand over their shares. I've already bought all the scattered shares. Together with your sister's share, I naturally have more than you do. So, next month, I'll clear out Dongying and demolish the building. After that, I'll use the place to build a cemetery." President Fan looked at Mo Ting and sneered, "So, this is your true self, isn't it? In front of Tang Ning, you're pretending to be righteous. You're wrong. I'm only inhumane when I'm dealing with animals." After speaking, Mo Ting looked at the watch on the back of his hand. "There's still some time before the police arrive. Why don't I take him to the top floor to have some fun?" Thinking about the fear of falling from the building, President Fan's pants subconsciously became wet. Seeing this, Mo Ting sneered and did not say another word. He simply opened up the information in his hands and flipped through it. Luo Qi. As soon as he heard this name, President Fan took a step forward in excitement. "Don't you dare touch my people." "Am I supposed to let you touch my people?" Mo Ting asked coldly. Seeing that Mo Ting didn't care, President Fan finally relented and said, "As long as you don't touch this person, I can apologize to you and kneel before you. It seems, touching this person will make you suffer. Mo Ting, if you dare to touch him, I won't let you off easily. Originally, I didn't want to blow up the entertainment industry. But, it's obvious that you like it this way," Mo Ting said fiercely. "Regarding Lin Qian's matter, Xia Hanmo's matter and the fact that my wife almost had a miscarriage, do you think I'll make you pay for each and every one of them? President Mo, I beg of you, please let Luo Qi go. He has nothing to do with me. None of this has anything to do with him." Mo Ting sat up and looked straight into President Fan's eyes. He then tore the man's information to shreds right in front of him. "Because of you, he's in trouble. If I don't make a move, do you think I'm easy to bully? If I don't retaliate, does that mean I'm giving you face? President Fan, don't beg me. I'm serious. At this moment, I'm inhumane." After speaking, Mo Ting leaned back and his handsome face disappeared into the darkness. President Fan looked at Mo Ting helplessly as he knelt on the ground. "Didn't you want me to kneel? I'll kneel to you right now, as long as you're willing to let my people go." Are you afraid? Why weren't you afraid when you were dealing with Lin Qian, Xia Hanmo and even my wife? Chapter 987. That's because I've never made a move, Mo Ting replied. A person doesn't live for their own happiness. To bribe my greedy brother-in-law, you must have put in a lot of effort, President Fan laughed. It doesn't matter. After all, it will eventually return to my hands, Mo Ting replied elegantly. Plus, since we're going to play a game, how could I not place a bet? In the dark, President Fan looked at Mo Ting sitting on the sofa from a distance. Suddenly, he felt a chill down his spine. Because, at this moment, he finally realized that there were some people that he couldn't afford to offend. Plus, I'm sure your first love wouldn't be willing to die if she knew how protective you are of her brother. Mo Ting dug up his old memories and President Fan's eyes turned red. Mo Ting, if you dare to go against him, I will make sure you suffer. Really? Mo Ting asked President Fan in the dark. Did you think you could play me to death? Why don't we continue playing a game? After speaking, Mo Ting gestured to one of the bodyguards and one of the bodyguards opened the front door for the people waiting outside to enter. At this time, President Fan saw his lawyer. President Fan. The lawyer led the police into the living room and said to Mo Ting, President Mo, what you're doing is illegal. You're illegally detaining him. After speaking, the lawyer ran over to President Fan and said to Mo Ting's bodyguards, let go of him. Mo Ting gestured for the bodyguards to let go of President Fan. At this time, President Fan said to the lawyer, I want the information in Mo Ting's hands. You need to give it back to me. The lawyer looked at Mo Ting and then at the bodyguards, President Fan, this isn't appropriate. Let us escort you out first. Indeed, if Mo Ting handed over the information to the police, the situation wouldn't be good. President Mo, I will remember everything that happened today. There's still a long way to go. After speaking, President Fan left the villa under the protection of his lawyer. As he left, he ran into his sister and brother-in-law. Mo Ting smiled and did not chase after him as he continued to sit in the living room. Not long after, President Fan's sister entered the living room and looked at Mo Ting worriedly. President Mo, are you going to let him go just like that? He will seek revenge on us. What's the rush? Mo Ting asked. A few minutes later, another group of policemen arrived at the villa. When they saw them, they immediately said, we are here to arrest Mr. Fan. But, your people have already taken him away, President Fan's sister replied. At this time, Mo Ting calmly walked out of the villa and shook hands with the police. Here is all the evidence of President Fan's crimes. You can take it away. Also, when a group of people arrived a moment ago, I didn't notice anything wrong. Now that I think about it, the police weren't wearing the standard police uniform. At first, the police were confused, they didn't understand what Mo Ting meant. But, a moment later, their leader reacted and said to his subordinates, not good, the criminal has escaped. Immediately issue an arrest warrant. What could be more hateful than becoming a fugitive? After the police left, Mo Ting also turned to leave. At this time, President Fan's sister called out worriedly, President Mo. Mo Ting did not turn around. He simply continued walking as he replied, don't worry, he won't have the chance to get revenge. After speaking, Mo Ting boarded his sports car and sped away, leaving President Lin and his wife behind with a chill in their hearts. This made President Lin realize one thing, even if Mo Ting promised to return to the board of directors, he wouldn't actually return. After all, he never imagined that Mo Ting would be so scary. President Fan was on the run, but the police quickly issued an arrest warrant. As it involved the entertainment industry, it immediately caused an uproar. President Fan, look, the lawyer said as soon as he saw the arrest warrant. What's going on? Where are the police that escorted us here? They've already returned, the lawyer replied. What's wrong? President Fan knew that this was part of Mo Ting's plan. But, he simply cursed in his heart and instructed the lawyer to quickly pack his things. But, his bank account had already been frozen and the entire world knew that he was a fugitive. By the way, can you fetch Luo Qi for me? I want to take him with me. President Fan, it's too late. The police are already downstairs. Hurry and leave through the back door. The lawyer urged. He didn't want President Fan to care too much about these worldly possessions. President Fan sneered as he ran away in a panic. As he arrived downstairs, he found Elder Fan's car parked in the garage. President Fan immediately ran over. Perhaps, when he saw Elder Fan, he felt like he still had a chance of survival. Grandfather, I knew you wouldn't give up on me at a time like this. Elder Fan humphed and gestured for the driver to drive off. Grandfather, let me hide at your place for a few days. I will find an opportunity to get revenge on Mo Ting. Let me take you to a safer place first, Elder Fan said with a hidden meaning. Unfortunately, President Fan didn't understand what he was trying to say. He simply felt like he was saved and that he hadn't been completely defeated. But, it didn't take long before he realized that Elder Fan had directly escorted him to the police station. As the police opened the door, President Fan looked at his grandfather in disbelief. I never thought that you would betray me. I am your grandson. I simply hope that you have a chance to live, Elder Fan sighed helplessly. At this moment, President Fan completely broke down. In one day, he had been betrayed by his own family twice. Grandfather, why are you doing this to me? If I didn't do this, you would have died even faster. It turns out, President Fan is the culprit that pushed Xia Hanmo. He also has a lot of past convictions. A lot of people in the industry know about his background. Now that he's been arrested, I can only say that I'm extremely happy. I heard that President Fan was played by someone. No matter who played him, it's a blessing for humanity to be able to catch a tumor like him. In short, President Mo was fast, accurate and ruthless to the extreme. As a result, everyone in the industry had a new understanding of him. This man didn't lose his tiger's teeth because he doted on his wife or because he became a father. On the contrary, when he was ruthless, he was as ruthless as before and killed without spilling blood. As soon as Long Jia saw the news at the hospital, she was shocked. How did boss do it? In such a short period of time, he was like a god to me. In reality, even Tang Ning was surprised. Although she was well aware of her husband's capabilities, she had never seen him act so ruthlessly. She had always thought that she was smart. But, it turned out, that man had simply been spoiling her. Because, in front of that man, she was nothing but a show-off. Chapter 988. I'm not sure either, Tang Ning shook her head. Tang Ning shook her head. Perhaps, a man's problem-solving ability is not something we can compare to. You're also very smart, Long Jia said as she rolled her eyes. Either way, President Fan has been arrested. In other words, all that awaits him is a harsh sentence. I feel so refreshed. It feels like the entire world has been cleansed. Tang Ning lay in bed. Although she didn't personally witness President Fan's tragic state, the thought of him losing his freedom forever made her feel happy. It didn't take long before Mo Ting returned to Tang Ning's side. All it took was one day. He had changed everything. Boss, you've really become my god. I'm in awe of you. After seeing Mo Ting, Long Jia felt like Mo Ting's image in her heart had become even bigger. This man was so powerful that he made her feel fear. Go back to work. I'll take care of Ning, Mo Ting was used to this. He didn't feel that there was anything special about getting rid of a piece of trash. Long Jia nodded her head. With her back to Mo Ting, she gestured for Tang Ning to get out of the hospital before she quickly left. She was determined not to be a third wheel between the couple. Finally, the hospital room quietened down. At this time, Tangning looked at Ting. Do you think the things I do on a daily basis are particularly stupid? Ting let out a gentle laugh as he patted Tangning on the head. You're the smartest woman. Has Xia Hanmo woken up? Tangning smiled. But, she suddenly realized that someone was still lying in the ICU because of her. Due to guilt, Xia Hanmo's sugar daddy had visited a few times. But, after seeing that Xia Hanmo hadn't woken up yet, he turned around and left the hospital. Since then, he never appeared again. Did this mean that he had abandoned her? Lin Qian visited Xia Hanmo in the hospital room and said a few words to her. At least, from Lin Qian's point of view, she no longer felt the pain that she had suffered in the past. The current Xia Hanmo was still the same Xia Hanmo that she once knew. Actually, I've never blamed you. I understand that love can blind people. So, after you dealt with that piece of trash, Zhou Qing, my hatred for you has already disappeared. Now, all I need to do is wait for you to wake up and hear me say these words. Xia Hanmo, Superstar Media is waiting for you. Perhaps it was because Xia Hanmo had sensed Lin Qian's presence, all her vital signs reacted. However, she just couldn't wake up. Lin Qian immediately called the doctor to resuscitate Xia Hanmo. She originally thought this was a sign that she was getting better. But, to her surprise, Xia Hanmo did not make it. Actually, the reason why she's still breathing is probably because she wants peace of mind. My condolences to the patient's family. Lin Qian felt like she had been struck by lightning. Was Xia Hanmo forcing herself to hold on just to wait for her forgiveness? If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have shown up at the hospital. You don't have to blame yourself. She's actually in a lot of pain. To her, this is actually a form of release. Didn't they say that his life wasn't in danger? Lin Qian suddenly grabbed onto the doctor's shirt and asked. Didn't they say that he could be saved? Family member, don't be agitated. The patient's condition has always been unstable. There are many uncertainties, I don't want to hear this. Lin Qian's eyes turned red. Doctor, please help me save her again. Don't give up, okay? We've tried our best. The doctor freed himself from Lin Qian's grip and patted her on the shoulder. My condolences. Lin Qian never imagined that this would be the last time she saw Xia Hanmo. She would be the one to personally send Xia Hanmo off. Hanmo, at this time, Tangning had no idea what had happened. But, Xia Hanmo's accident had already received a lot of attention from the media. Now that Xia Hanmo had passed away, the industry was bound to report on it. Lin Qian weakly returned to Tangning's room. As she looked at Tangning, tears rolled down her cheeks. What's wrong? Hanmo didn't make it, Lin Qian said as she sobbed. She tried her best to explain herself. As soon as Tangning heard this, she froze. What do you mean by, didn't make it? Lin Qian tilted her head and did not say another word. But, her crying was enough to explain everything. Tangning immediately struggled to get out of bed, but Ting carried her straight to Xia Hanmo's room. At this moment, she was covered in white bandages. How did this happen? President Fan has already been caught and the bad guys have fallen into his trap. How could you not make it? Xia Hanmo. Tangning's voice was soft, so soft that she couldn't even hear herself clearly. A moment later, Tangning fainted in Ting's arms. Ting furrowed his brows and said to Lin Qian, call the doctor. Lin Qian reacted and immediately called the doctor. But, after an examination, the doctor concluded, no. If the child continues to stay in the mother's stomach, both mother and child will be in danger. If the child is to be born prematurely, we will have to perform a C-section. As soon as Ting heard this, he immediately gave Tang Yichen a phone call. Something's happened to Ning. Bring Lu Guangli here immediately. As soon as Tang Yichen heard that Ting wanted to bring Lu Guangli, she immediately knew that it wasn't a small matter. So, she hung up the phone and immediately took action. At this time, Mo Ting stopped the doctor from performing a C-section. President Mo, if you delay treatment like this, you may not be able to keep the child and you may even hurt the mother. Mo Ting was actually quite confused. But, he trusted Tang Ning and himself. Without my permission, no one can touch my wife. You're putting your wife in danger. The doctor's advice was useless. Mo Ting wouldn't listen to him because he needed to have the right judgment. He believed that this wasn't what Tang Ning wanted, so he had to trust himself. Waiting for Tang Yichen and Lu Guangli to arrive was the best choice for Tang Ning. Time was running out. During this time, the doctor visited Lin Qian a few times. She even wanted to ask Mo Ting why he hadn't made a decision yet. But, she knew that Mo Ting loved Tang Ning the most in this world. There was no way he would sit idly by and watch something happen to Tang Ning. With this thought, she immediately calmed down. Half an hour later, Tang Yichen arrived at the hospital with Lu Guangli. As soon as she saw Mo Ting, she immediately approached. How's the situation? She's inside. Mo Ting pushed open the door for Tang Yichen to enter. Tang Yichen dragged Lu Guangli into the room and immediately performed a second check on Tang Ning. But, as soon as the results were out, the couple looked at each other and walked out the door. They then said to Mo Ting, it's indeed dangerous, but a C-section isn't the only way. Transfer her to another hospital. I'll do my best to ensure that she has a full-term delivery. Are you sure? Where's the doctor that just diagnosed her? I'm going to tear him apart and give you an answer along the way, Tang Yichen humphed. Chapter 989. You don't need to worry about something like this, Mo Ting said in a deep voice. Mo Ting spoke in a low voice, but Tang Yichen understood what he meant. Tang Yichen nodded her head as Lu Guangli stood behind her with his arms crossed and an impatient expression on his face. Every time, Tang Yichen called him over and told him that her illness was difficult to treat. But, every time, Tang Yichen was called over, it was either because of Tang Ning or because of her friend. I'm going home. Tang Yichen knew that Lu Guangli wasn't happy. To be exact, he had never been happy before. So, she could only nod her head. After all, she needed to personally make arrangements for Tang Ning. Afterwards, a large group of media arrived. After all, someone from the industry had left and Tang Ning was still in the hospital. So, the media wanted to create some news. Before the media arrives, let's transfer Tang Ning to another hospital. After all, she still needs to rest. Mo Ting did not respond to Tang Yichen. Instead, he gave Lu Che a phone call and instructed him to arrange for bodyguards and PR. As for Xia Hanmo, Long Jia, and Lin Qian had no choice but to deal with the aftermath. So, by the time Tang Ning woke up, she was already back at Hyatt Regency. Without the noise and cries of the hospital, Tang Ning wasn't used to it. Hanmo, he's already gone. Mo Ting held her back and pressed her back onto the bed. Listen to me and get some rest. The industry has nothing to do with you for now. Tang Ning sat on the bed as her throat trembled. There were some things that she couldn't say anymore. Ting, am I no longer suited to stay in the industry? I feel like I've hurt a lot of people. Hearing this, Mo Ting immediately grabbed onto her hand and said, in life, people make a lot of mistakes and bear a lot of burdens that they don't think they can handle. Especially when it comes to lives that can't be changed. The hardest part of being human is to move forward with burdens on your shoulders, okay? Tang Ning's eyes turned red as she stared deeply into Mo Ting's eyes. Her voice sounded like it was choking up, but, 2 people have already left me. That's not something you can control. Qiao Sen's wish and Xia Hanmo's forgiveness have both been granted to them. Even if you blame yourself and feel remorseful, you still can't save them. Instead, you can hurt me. After hearing this, Tang Ning finally burst into tears. Let me cry just this one time. I promise, just this one time. Mo Ting wrapped his arms around her and leaned her against his shoulder. go ahead and cry. Cry as much as you want. After you're done crying, you can continue forward with Xiao Sen and Xia Hanmo's dreams. Tang Ning felt wronged. It was rare for her to cry in front of Mo Ting like this. Normally, she was a strong woman. No matter what difficulties she faced, she would never give up or compromise. But at this moment, she let go of all her burdens. All she felt was sadness over Xia Hanmo's departure. After crying her heart out, Tang Ning finally felt a lot better as she returned to her usual self. For now, all you can do is rest at home. But, I won't object to letting you use Lu Che for now. Tang Ning nodded her head. At this moment, she knew that only Mo Ting could understand what she was thinking. The artist, Xia Hanmo, has been confirmed to have died after falling from a building. The culprit, Mr. Fan, has also been arrested and has confessed to his crimes. He told the police that he knew that Xia Hanmo was innocent. His motive was to make someone else suffer. And this person was none other than the well-known boss of Superstar Media, Mr. Tang. He was also Xia Hanmo's former boss. Mr. Fan has plotted against Mr. Tang multiple times in the past, but failed to achieve his motive. But, this time, he actually pushed Mr. Tang's ex-artist down from the 5th floor just to vent his anger. This wasn't entertainment news, it was social news. After Tang Ning finished watching the video, Mo Ting wanted to turn off the television, but she stopped him. The public must be scolding like crazy by now. Another person has died because of me. If you're not prepared to face the consequences, then don't watch the news. If you're already prepared, then don't say things that make people feel helpless, Mo Ting said in a stern tone. You obviously know what you should do. Tang Ning closed her eyes. The harsh words I'm saying to you right now are because I don't want you to be defeated by your own actions. Right now, Lin Weisan is still waiting to send his wife over for you to make her famous. Xia Hanmo's fans are still waiting for you to explain yourself. The Ant Queen has only finished filming, but has not yet entered post-production, and the baby in your stomach is still waiting for you to take care of. After hearing this, Tang Ning gripped onto the blanket tightly. Because every time an enemy injured her, it would actually make her stronger. So, this time, she wasn't going to be defeated by anyone. Even if Xia Hanmo's fans had already sent Hyatt Regency a photo of Xia Hanmo's body, a letter written in blood and more. In the past, when Xia Hanmo was at Superstar Media, she was truly happy. Everything that happened afterwards was her own doing. We had no complaints when she was abandoned by Superstar Media. But Xia Hanmo has died because of Tang Ning and someone else. We cannot accept this. Tang Ning needs to give us an explanation. Otherwise, we will boycott Hai Rui as well. Hai Rui's PR has always been timely and beautiful. But, this time, Tang Ning and Mr. Fan's incident has already made it onto the news. Let's see how Hai Rui is going to explain themselves. If Tang Ning doesn't give us an explanation, we will send flower wreaths to Hyatt Regency every day. Of course, there were also voices of reason. I heard that before Xia Hanmo's accident, Tang Ning helped her out. I'm sure that even if Xia Hanmo got into an accident, she wouldn't regret it. Instead of blaming the culprit, you guys are blaming the people that Xia Hanmo cares about. Is it because you know that Tang Ning is easy to bully? Xia Hanmo's fans were extremely agitated. They didn't just say it out loud, they actually sent some unsightly things to Hai Rui. It seemed, since Xia Hanmo was already dead, they should get back at her. Back when Xia Hanmo was kicked out of Superstar Media, Xia Hanmo had also suffered a lot. This time, she was going to pay them back with interest. Of course, the incident had gotten so big that even Hai Rui was being boycotted and attacked because of Tang Ning. As the decision-maker, it would be unreasonable for Mo Ting to side with Tang Ning. Someone couldn't help but ask, has Tang Ning's career in the entertainment industry finally come to an end? It seemed, no one would dare to stand out and speak up for Tang Ning anymore. Unless, Xing Lan and Luo Xing gave up on their futures. As for Long Jia and Lin Qian, after the incident, Tangning invited them to Hyatt Regency. I'm sure you've seen the current situation. I'm handing Superstar Media over to you. Tangning, are you giving up? Who said I was giving up? Tangning asked. I need to hide for a while. I can't let Superstar Media be destroyed. Chapter 990. But, without you, we wouldn't be able to continue our work. Hearing this, Tangning laughed as she lay in bed. Ever since I started modeling, you've been able to handle things on your own. Why are you acting like this? Lin Qian is pregnant, so you can't tire her out. Superstar Media is now in your hands and you can do whatever you want with it. Long Jia, I hope that when I return, Superstar Media will be on the rise. Where are you going? Long Jia could tell that Tangning was planning to leave, so she began to panic. After I deal with Hanmo's matter, I'm going to safely give birth to my daughter. After that, I'm going to study film production and other things, Tangning replied. If I don't study systematically, how can I produce a better film? After hearing this, Long Jia laughed. I knew you wouldn't be defeated so easily. You're indeed the Tangning I know. But, after laughing, she fell silent. But, if you leave like this, you'll be completely silent. As time goes by, the industry will eventually drown you. When have I ever cared about something like this? Tangning comforted. Right now, I carry the dreams of 2 people on my shoulders. I'm going to fulfill their dreams. As for Lin Qian, you're currently pregnant. After you give birth, I hope you can return to Superstar Media and work alongside Long Jia. Don't worry, Lin Qian replied. Actually, Lin Qian was also a little distracted. She blamed herself for indirectly causing Xia Hanmo's death. Tangning understood what she was thinking, so she comforted, you gave Hanmo what she wanted the most. You weren't the one that caused her death. Your forgiveness has freed her. Then, what will free you? The 2 of you, stop beating around the bush. Tell me, when are you leaving and when are you coming back? After the press conference, I'll completely retreat. The day The Ant Queen is released will be the day I return. Hearing this, Long Jia nodded her head. I trust you because you are Tangning. Even when faced with a difficult situation, you will grit your teeth and persevere. In that case, when will the press conference be held? The day after tomorrow, Tangning replied with an indecipherable expression on her face. She owed Xia Hanmo an explanation and she owed Xia Hanmo's fans an explanation. Of course, she also made an important decision. So, the news that Tangning was holding a press conference immediately caused an uproar in Beijing. Originally, some people assumed that she wouldn't come out to clear her name. But, who would have thought, they would be slapped in the face so quickly? I never thought Tangning would kneel to the outside world. I've lived for a long time. This incident has affected too much and Hai Rui has been implicated. Of course she has to step out and act. Otherwise, how will the public continue to chase after Hai Rui's artists? I want to see what kind of tricks she has up her sleeve. Everyone was waiting to see Tangning cry in front of the cameras. Because, this time, she had no way of denying the fact that she had taken a life. I'm used to seeing her attack others. This time, I'm going to open my eyes wide and see how she's going to put on a good show. She simply told Luo Sheng, Xing Lan and all her friends, including Bei Qindong and the others, not to speak up for her. It was best for them to stay as far away from her as possible. It wasn't easy for anyone to become famous. There was no need to ruin it because of her. So, this time, Tangning's friends all remained silent. This was all because of Tangning's numerous requests. Even so, as good friends, Hua Jingjing, who hadn't seen Tangning in a long time, still came to Hyatt Regency to keep Tangning company. Sometimes, I really miss the times when we walked the runway together. We were just simple models back then. But, in the blink of an eye, you've become someone that people can only look up to. Doesn't that mean I'm about to become the soil that others can step on? Tangning asked. Life is unpredictable. I miss the days we spent together. I miss the time when you pulled me back from the gates of hell. Do you still remember when I tried to commit suicide? Of course, Tangning nodded. Tangning nodded her head. Jingjing, I've actually learned a lot from you. Especially your courage to start afresh after suffering so many injuries. I need that kind of courage right now. I've already survived, so you can too. That's why I've ordered flowers for you on the day of your press conference. No matter what decision you make, Fang Yu and I will support you. After speaking, Hua Jingjing gave Tangning a hug. Good luck. I still want to see the Tangning that's always scheming and high-spirited. You'll see. Thinking back to the path she had once taken, Tangning couldn't help but smile. Hua Jingjing had reminded her of the wealth she had accumulated along the way. She couldn't go backwards and lose to the past. Since she was going to do something big, she was going to do it as long as she had a clear conscience. It didn't take long before the press conference arrived. Tangning had lost count of the number of press conferences she had held. It seemed, every time, she created some kind of news. From the time she announced her comeback to the time she announced her retirement, Tangning realized that she had matured over the past few years. The press conference was arranged to be held in the lobby of Hai Rui. This place could hold a few thousand people. Mo Ting specially prepared chairs for the media. Of course, everything else was to ensure Tangning's safety. The media knew that the press conference today was Tangning's response to the Xia Hanmo incident. As for Tangning's performance, the reporters were looking forward to it. At this time, Tangning was in the waiting room. As this was her last outing before giving birth, she was dressed in a long black dress and had her makeup applied to ensure she maintained her perfect appearance. Are you ready? Mo Ting asked as he quietly entered the waiting room. Tangning turned around and nodded at Mo Ting. I've been ready for a long time. In that case, let's head out. Xia Hanmo's fans were also present today. But, Hai Rui had already taken precautions. No one would be able to hurt Tangning, at least not in their territory. 2 p.m., the press conference officially began. Facing a few hundred reporters, Tangning walked onto the stage with Mo Ting's help. She did not sit down, instead, she stood up straight and looked at the reporters below the stage. She knew that every single one of them wanted to tear her apart. But, she was afraid, every single time, she would disappoint them. Afterwards, Tangning adjusted the microphone and said to everyone, I know everyone is here today to hold me accountable for my actions. Because of me, Xia Hanmo has unfortunately died. Chapter 991. Sometimes, some of you want to say, Tangning, look, another person is going to die because of you. Why aren't you the one that died? I'm sure that's what most people are thinking right now. They all want me to die instead. After a short pause, Tangning continued, I also want me to die, but it's already happened. What can I do? I've seen most of the comments online and the things that Hanmo's fans have sent me. But, what do you guys want me to do? Jump down from a 30-story building? I'm sorry, I won't do that. I will live on and live a good life. Whether you like it or not, I will still be here. I won't lose a single hair because of your hatred. I'm well aware that a lot of people are simply using the dead as an excuse to bully others online. I don't think they're respecting the dead. Sorry, Tangning, I need to interrupt you for a moment. A female reporter suddenly raised her hand and interrupted Tangning. Why can't you just admit that you were wrong? Why must you say that everyone bullied you online? Tangning looked at the reporter's ridicule and replied, how do you know that I haven't apologized to Hanmo? Do you know the entire story? Do you know what happened? No matter what, I still need to apologize and I'm fine with it. It's not like I'm facing you. What have I done wrong to you? Why should I apologize to you? You're probably the only person that has the courage to defend yourself after killing someone. In that case, what do you think I should do? Tangning asked. Kneel in front of you. Beg for the world's forgiveness? I know you guys want to see that. Tang Ning sneered. Tangning, you're relying on your popularity to be so arrogant. I've never asked you to give me any popularity. If you don't want to increase my popularity, you can walk straight. The door is just to your left. Since you're not here to apologize, then why are you holding a press conference? Are you here to argue with keyboard warriors? Tangning glanced at the man one more time before getting straight to the main topic of the day. I've called this press conference for a few reasons. Xia Hanmo's incident is currently being investigated by the police. Personally, I respect the law and have faith in the law. I'm sure the culprit will pay for his crimes tenfold, 100-fold. As for me, I will be resigning from my role at Superstar Media and leaving Hairui. However, I will not be retreating from the entertainment industry because I have more important things to do. Because I will use the rest of my life to fulfill Qiao Sen and Xia Hanmo's dreams and comfort their souls in heaven. As for Hanmo's brother, I will also take care of him. I will make up for the mistakes I have made. It doesn't matter what kind of image I have to set up for myself. I also hope that those who have suffered because of me can be revived. However, all of this is just a dream. I will do my best and do everything I can. Although I know my actions won't be able to appease your anger, it doesn't matter anymore. You can continue to scold me and fans can continue to send flowers to my home, but I, Tangning, will no longer respond. I don't owe anyone anything, but none of you. That's all I have to say. I will now give the three of you space to ask your questions. After speaking, Tangning looked at Xia Hanmo's fans. She hoped that the people that were asking her questions were people that truly loved Xia Hanmo. As expected, someone stood up from the fan section and asked Tangning through a microphone, "Will you really fulfill Hanmo's dream?" Of course. In that case, do you know what her dream is? Apart from receiving Lin Qian's forgiveness after the Zhouqing incident, she also wants to earn more money to cure her brother's illness, Tangning replied. However, when she mentioned Xia Hanmo's first wish, the rims of her eyes turned red. She's already fulfilled her first wish. After hearing Tangning's words, Xia Hanmo's fans nodded their heads. Tangning, I don't blame you anymore. I believe that you are the most exciting thing that has ever happened to Xia Hanmo. She once mentioned in a book, especially after leaving Superstar Media, that she would often write on her blog about how much she wanted to receive your forgiveness. Although she used her death to get what she wanted, I believe that her death wasn't as painful as everyone thinks. Since you knew about both of her wishes, it means that you treated her sincerely. That's why I believe that Xia Hanmo's death is more painful than anyone else because you will blame yourself for the rest of your life. The justice that we fans want is a response from you. Now that we've received it, we have no regrets, just like Xia Hanmo. As her fans, we don't want her to continue being hyped up after her death. We hope that you can let her die a peaceful and dignified death. Tangning looked at the fan and nodded her head as tears rolled down her cheeks. The fan has asked 2 questions. I have one more question. Tangning, ever since you announced your retreat from the industry, you've been unhappy with the media. Do you hate reporters? Hearing this question, Tangning replied without hesitation, yes. Everyone has a dark side and a bright side. There are good and bad sides to everything. From what I see, there is no absolute right or wrong in this world, there is only absolute benefit. And the reporters are the people that I deeply understand. I'm not just talking about entertainment reporters, I'm also talking about news reporters. Because you guys can't even respect the objective truth. You're violent, cruel, succumb to benefits and laugh at the lecherous way you bully the weak. Since you look down on us so much, why did you invite us? Someone asked arrogantly. Because I still have hope for the industry. I hope that one day, all opinions can be expressed based on the objective truth. Are you satisfied with this answer? After speaking, the entire hall fell silent. At an event like today, Tangning was supposed to be the one kneeling and begging for mercy and crying. So, why was it that, as the press conference was about to end, the ones that were scolded into silence were the reporters? Tangning was still Tangning. Even though she was at a disadvantage, she still managed to control the situation. Even though, from the moment she announced her retreat to the moment she left Hairui, she was forced into a corner. Finally, the press conference came to an end. Just as Tangning was about to leave, someone suddenly asked, "Tangning, when are you coming back?" Tangning turned around and looked at the person in question. It was a skinny little girl that smiled at her. Tangning also smiled back. "I will speak with my work." Work? What work? She wasn't going to act anymore. Could it be the legendary sci-fi blockbuster? Chapter 992. After smiling, Tangning disappeared from the reporter's view. From this moment onwards, she was no longer a manager. After stepping down from Superstar Media and becoming independent from Hairui, the only thing she retained was her contract with President Mo. Even though she was no longer an artist of Hairui, President Mo was still her personal manager. After leaving the press conference, Tangning went to Superstar Media's office. From the moment she first decided to establish the agency to where she was today, Tangning had experienced a lot of things. Long Jia watched as she packed her luggage and felt a little upset. "Superstar Media will always be yours." Tangning smiled at Long Jia. "I believe in you. Even without me, you can still make Superstar Media sail. Where are you going next?" "I'll give you a lift." Long Jia immediately ran over to help Tangning with the luggage. "Just help me carry it to the car." "I still need to go to a dark place," Tangning replied. The confident Tangning was once again about to disappear from the public eye. From being a model to being an actress, from being an actress to being a manager, she no longer even wanted to be a manager. She treated the entertainment industry like a playground where no one could control her. After all, she was different from those that chased after fame and fortune. The reporters said that they were invited by Tangning. But, ever since Tangning announced her comeback, when had the reporters not fought to interview her? Soon after, the media reported that Tangning was holding a press conference. Xia Hanmo's fans expressed their understanding, but the majority of people were still angry. But, no matter how bad their words were, as long as Tangning didn't care, their existence was just asking to be humiliated. It was like throwing a punch at cotton. It was extremely powerless. Afterwards, Tangning went to the dark place that she mentioned, the police station. She had to at least meet the person that caused Xia Hanmo to lose her life. Due to his lack of care, President Fan's face was covered in a beard and he looked like a caveman. He was dressed in a prisoner's uniform, his hands were cuffed and his expression was extremely dull. Tangning's arrival made his eyes light up. Even though they were separated by a glass window, he still pounced towards Tangning in a frenzy. "Let me out, let me out. I don't want to stay here." The police told Tangning the visiting hours and reminded her not to be late. Tangning nodded her head, thanked the police and picked up her phone. Meanwhile, President Fan looked at Tangning like a madman. He had seen a glimmer of hope. It seemed, he was currently at the stage where, as soon as he saw a living person, he would beg for mercy. He desperately wanted to get out. Prison wasn't a place for people to stay. There was no other reason. It was because President Imo had asked Lu Che to take good care of President Fan. "Tangning, I was wrong, I was really wrong. Please let me out. As long as you let me out, I will do anything you want me to do." Seeing President Fan's reaction, Tangning simply looked at him coldly. "If you can bring Hanmo back to life, I will let you out." Tangning's voice was soft, but every word hit President Fan's heart. "Moreover, what are we going to do outside? I think this place is perfect for you. Hanmo can only stay in a jar. You should be lucky enough to be locked up in a cage," Tangning replied. "I came here today for this. As she spoke, Tangning pulled out a photo from her handbag and showed it to President Fan. I'm here to tell you that Luo Qi has been captured by the police because he was drugged. I'm sure you will see each other in prison very soon. As soon as he saw the photo, President Fan smashed the glass like crazy. Don't touch him. Don't touch him. After Hanmo died, I thought of many ways to make you pay with your life. But, for someone like you, death is the best release. So, I won't let you die. I will make you suffer until you can't live anymore. Tangning tore Luo Qi's photo in front of President Fan. As long as it's something that you love, your home and the people that you care about, I will destroy it all. No. President Fan cried. I killed her. It has nothing to do with Luo Qi. It's too late, Tangning replied. I will tear him apart. After speaking, Tangning stood up from her seat. This place was too dark. She didn't want to stay there for a second longer. As for Xia Hanmo's revenge, she was going to take it one step at a time. She was going to make President Fan's life a living hell. After leaving the prison, Tangning received a phone call from Mo Ting. Lin Weisan was at Hai Rui, waiting to see her. Tangning thought to herself, after what happened at the wedding, they definitely needed to make things clear. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to rest easy. So, when her body allowed it, she decided to head over to Hai Rui. Lin Weisan also felt guilty about what happened to Xia Hanmo, whether it was the day she was drugged or the day she was pushed down from her position. Tangning, I'm deeply sorry about what happened to Xia Hanmo. If I had been more cautious and sent President Fan away, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. If I didn't have a grudge against President Fan, I wouldn't have dragged you down with me. This isn't your fault, Editor Lin. Let bygones be bygones. However, I have already resigned from Superstar Media. If your wife is still willing to work at Superstar Media, I can ask Long Jie to guide her. She will still become famous. Let's talk about this another time. What do you plan to do now? It seemed, this man didn't trust Long Jie. Fine. Otherwise, if something happened to him, Long Jie wouldn't be able to hit or scold him. After hearing Lin Weisan's question, Tangning pointed to her lower abdomen. Of course, I want to give birth safely. Her daughter was the most important thing to her right now. So, she promised Tang Yichen that she would deal with everything as soon as possible and return to the hospital to wait for her delivery. So, the only thing left to do was to prepare for Xia Hanmo's funeral. Thinking of the word funeral, Tangning's eyes turned red. But, Mo Ting hugged her comfortingly. I'm sure, if Xia Hanmo was still alive and saw everything that happened today, she would definitely be able to let go of all her pain. At this time, a man with flaxen hair and a pair of gray eyes looked at Tangning on the television with an interested smile on his face. He had been waiting at home for Tangning for a few days, but she did not contact him. He was the sci-fi expert that Lin Weisan had planned to introduce to Tangning. He was also a cartoonist. Such a perfect figure, if it was drawn into a cartoon, it would definitely be very attractive. How come I never noticed it before? I'm sure it would be interesting to tease a woman like her. He was a man that valued first impressions. It was fine if he didn't notice it before, but now that he saw this domineering woman, he suddenly felt that she was very attractive. But, Tangning wasn't someone that normal people could control. Chapter 993. Apart from her brother, Xia Hanmo had no other relatives. So, her funeral was simple. On the day of her burial, it was drizzling lightly. Tangning and everyone from Superstar Media were dressed in black with black umbrellas in their hands. Coupled with the fans that attended the funeral, it was a spectacular sight. The fans cried as they held on to the books that Xia Hanmo had written and posters of the films that she had once acted in. It meant that from now on, all of these things were going to return to the earth. Tangning told Xia Hanmo about President Fan's imprisonment and torture. She also told Xia Hanmo that she would take care of her brother on her behalf so she could rest in peace. But, a moment later, Long Jia turned around and leaned on Tang Ning's arm. Look at the man hiding in the woods. Doesn't he look like Zhou Qing? To everyone's surprise, Tang Ning did not even bother to take a look. She simply asked calmly, is he not dead yet? Should we call someone? No need. He has already gotten back what he owed Xia Hanmo. Let him live. Death is better than living on his last breath. Long Jia nodded her head and let him be. Relationships between humans were sometimes strange. When a person was in front of them, all kinds of tricks could be used, deceived, and used. However, when the person was really dead and lying on the ground, no matter how great the hatred was, it would all dissipate with the wind. Zhou Qing's sins would naturally be paid for with the rest of his life. Xia Hanmo probably didn't want superstar media to have anything to do with this jerk. After the funeral, Long Jia officially took over superstar media. But, without Tang Ning, could superstar media still produce another star of the future like Xing Lan and Luo Sheng? Above all, Long Jia's matter with the Lu family had not been resolved yet. Lu Che's mother was still raising a son for him, but no one knew if he was born yet. It was only a matter of time before the matter was resolved. Luckily, Long Jia was experienced in the industry and had her own connections. So, as long as she wanted to, there was nothing she couldn't do. From today onwards, will you be returning to the hospital to rest? Tang Ning nodded her head. Tang Yichen originally didn't want me to come out, but I asked Mo Ting to give me some time. She couldn't do anything to him. Meeting Mo Ting is your greatest blessing. Don't worry, I will come visit you often. Tang Ning smiled happily. Soon, she boarded the Black Shadow and was sent straight to the military hospital by Mo Ting. You're finally back. As soon as Tang Yichen saw Mo Ting, she relaxed. Although I promised to carry the child to term, I can't afford to be tortured like this. I will be a good girl from now on, Tang Ning admitted defeat. Go to your luxurious ward and lie down. In the past, when Tang Xian was still around, Tang Yichen often used the excuse that she was too busy at medical school and rarely returned home. When it came to her relationship with Tang Xian, she always maintained a neutral stance and never said a word. So, in the past, she and Tang Yichen didn't have much of a relationship. But, after getting to know each other, Tang Ning realized that Tang Yichen was a warm and straightforward woman. Tang Ning could tell that she admired Lu Guangli. But, what about Lu Guangli? Inside the hospital room, Tang Ning lay down in bed and asked the busy Tang Yichen, isn't it time for you to consider your marriage? I've already given birth to 3 children. Tang Yichen was a little surprised. She stopped what she was doing and turned to look at Tang Ning. Although you can do whatever you want on the outside, when you're at the hospital, you'll still be at my mercy. So, it's best if you don't pry into my personal matters. Lu Guangli isn't easy to chase, is he? Do you believe that I won't hit you right now? Tang Yichen raised the medical records in her hands. I am just a small shrimp under his command. 90% of the people in the military hospital like him. I am, at most, his buddy. Intimacy is only built on this foundation. You are the second miss of the Tang family. How can you be so cowardly? You have guts. But, don't come to me, Tang Yichen humphed as she held on to the pathology report and left Tang Ning's room. Tang Ning smiled as she shook her head. She thought to herself, Tang Yichen was yet another pair of enemies. Actually, Tang Yichen and Lu Guangli had a relationship before. At that time, she actually thought that Lu Guangli liked her. But, in the end, she realized that Lu Guangli simply treated her like a brother. To be exact, he treated her like a little sidekick. It didn't take long before Tang Yichen returned to her post. At this time, Lu Guangli had just stepped off the operating table. As soon as he saw her, he looked at her coldly and asked, were you busy with your sister again? Do you remember that you have a group meeting at 3 p.m.? Tang Yichen froze for a moment. She had actually forgotten about it. Don't come begging me. Even if you beg me, I won't help you. After speaking, Lu Guangli turned and left, leaving Tang Yichen all alone in the corridor. Tang Yichen thought to herself, the worst that could happen was a scolding. If I beg you, my surname isn't Tang. But, when it came to the group meeting, all Tang Yichen could do was place her gaze on Lu Guangli as she stretched out her hands under the table and quickly sent him a message. What kind of stupid research topic is this? I already told you about it last time. If you did, I would chop off my head and let you kick it like a ball. Lu Guangli sat in his seat of honor and looked at Tang Yichen quietly. She had so much energy when it came to her sister's matter, yet, she was so stupid when it came to his research topic. Lu Guangli, help me through this. Tell me the answer. Out of all the doctors here, you're the only one asking me for an answer, Lu Guangli replied immediately. Are you going to help me or not? After Tang Yichen asked this question, Lu Guangli said to everyone, have a proper attitude during the meeting. Don't keep playing with your phone. As soon as he said this, everyone turned to look at Tang Yichen. Tang Yichen quietly put away her phone and glared at Lu Guangli with eyes filled with hatred. Tang Yichen, I can tell you've prepared well. Why don't you tell us about the difficulties of this patient's surgery and how to overcome them? Tang Yichen glared at Lu Guangli and stood up from her seat. But, she wasn't prepared, so the answer was definitely wrong. Apart from being scolded, there was nothing Tang Yichen could do. So, after the meeting ended, Lu Guangli asked Tang Yichen to stay, listen to what I said the other day 3 times before you can leave. Lu Guangli, with your EQ, you will never be able to get out of singlehood. Lu Guangli did not say a word as he took the documents and left the room. But, as he left, the corners of his lips subconsciously curved upwards. Couldn't he just have a sidekick? Why would he need a lover? Chapter 994. After hearing from the nurse that Tang Yichen was being punished, Tang Ning turned to look at Immerse and laughed. It seems, this witch has actually met a demon slayer. Now that you're no longer involved with the entertainment industry, are you trying to matchmake someone else? Mo Ting teased as he worked with Tang Ning in the hospital room. Lying in bed is a boring thing to do, let alone lying in bed for a few months, Tang Ning said helplessly. But, as she looked at her bulging stomach, she couldn't help but soften. Ting, I can ignore everything else, but I will personally oversee the post-production of The Ant Queen. Mo Ting was sitting opposite Tang Ning. As soon as he heard this, he put down the pen in his hand. What's so difficult about that? Has Hanmo's brother been transferred here? I've set up a special medical team in the VIP ward. As for the rest, we can only leave it up to fate and do our best, Mo Ting nodded. Afterwards, Tang Ning did not say another word as she looked at Mo Ting from afar. She looked at the man that was always handsome and charming. By the way, a fan sent you a sci-fi comic. I asked Lu Che to bring it to you so you can use it to kill some time. Someone actually sent me something like this? At this time, Tang Ning and Mo Ting did not feel the intrusive nature of the comic. After all, the owner of the comic was determined to get his hands on anything he wanted, no matter how much effort he had to put in, even if it took him 10 years. In the past, he didn't pay much attention to the entertainment industry, so he naturally didn't notice Tang Ning. Now that he was interested in her, it was because of one thing, fate. Tang Yichen was tormented until late at night. She originally wanted to return home, but she ended up collapsing in the doctor's dormitory. She was so tired that she couldn't get out of bed. Lu Guangli, you jerk. I curse you to have your penis withered and become impotent. But, to her surprise, Lu Guangli did not return home either. Instead, he was lying on her upper berth. Tang Yichen screamed in shock, this is the female doctor's dormitory. There aren't enough rooms, so this one is empty, Lu Guangli replied from above. Tang Yichen was still angry, so she climbed out of bed, packed her things and prepared to return home. You can enjoy it on your own. Is this because I made things difficult for you during the group meeting? I'm a vengeful person, Tang Yichen replied before she turned and left the room, leaving Lu Guangli all alone in bed. This time, she was going to be angry for a few more days. So, for the next few days, Tang Yichen avoided Lu Guangli whenever she saw him. If she couldn't avoid him, she completely ignored him. Lu Guangli did not show any signs of displeasure, so Tang Yichen became even angrier. Yichen, why was she the only angry? Tang Ning could sense the atmosphere between the two was a little unusual, so she seized the opportunity to gossip. I haven't seen you talk to Dr. Lu for the past few days. Tang Yichen rolled her eyes and stopped her from continuing. Everything is normal. I'm going to do my rounds. He bullied. Lu, Yichen, Tang, Yichen, no need. Just looking at him makes me angry. Out of sight, out of mind, Tang Yichen waved her hand. She did not want Tang Ning to get involved. Lu Guangli owed her all the way back to his previous life. But, judging from Tang Yichen's reaction, Tang Ning was even more curious. What did Lu Guangli do to Tang Yichen? Most importantly, the hospital was spreading rumors that the hospital chief's daughter invited Lu Guangli out for a camping trip and he actually agreed. This made Tang Yichen even more unwilling to talk to him. It was a Saturday. Worst of all, Tang Yichen had to work the night shift. In the dead of the night, Tang Yichen stopped by Tang Ning's room. The hospital is in an uproar. Everyone is saying that the hospital chief's daughter is finally going to steal Lu Guangli from your hands. I never thought that the hospital was so gossipy. It's almost as good as the entertainment industry. He doesn't belong to me. How can it be considered stealing? Tang Yichen replied casually. Where's brother-in-law? He's at home looking after the kids. He'll come over in a bit. Let him get some rest. He doesn't need to accompany him every day. It's not like you're about to give birth. You'll have to talk to him about that, Tang Ning smiled. At this time, Lu Guangli suddenly appeared outside the door. Tang Ning immediately said to Tang Yichen, it seems he hasn't been stolen yet. It seems Dr. Lu didn't go camping. What does it have to do with me? So, when are you going to hand in your thesis? Lu Guangli asked as he leaned against the door frame. I'm going to stay up late tonight to write it. Then why aren't you going? Tang Yichen turned around and glared at him before she walked out of the room impatiently. Meanwhile, Lu Guangli followed closely behind. Tang Yichen was shocked. Aren't you going camping? Why are you following me? If you can't write it, I will also be held responsible. So, I'm going to supervise you tonight. You're crazy. Tang Yichen scoffed and ignored Lu Guangli. She then returned to her office and began to work hard. At this time, Lu Guangli stood behind her and looked at her from afar. They were the only two people in the office. Time seemed to stop at this moment. A moment later, Tang Yichen stretched lazily. Lu Guangli quickly asked, Are you done? I'm done. You can go home and sleep now, Tang Yichen replied. Don't ask me why I didn't go camping. Lu Guangli asked as he sat nearby with his arms crossed. What has it got to do with me? Of course it has something to do with you. If you had finished your thesis, I wouldn't have come to the hospital. In that case, I can help you arrange a meeting with the hospital chief's daughter. In a moment of impulse, Tang Yichen pulled out her phone and dialed a number. But, Lu Guangli quickly snatched it away. Give it back to me. Stop being so childish. To her surprise, the call was already connected. Lu Guangli glanced at the screen and handed the phone back to Tang Yichen. Tomorrow, the entire hospital will know that I stood up to the hospital chief's daughter and spent the entire night with you. Do you feel uncomfortable if you don't trick me? Tang Yichen was about to explode. Since it's already come to this, do you want to go camping with me? I've already prepared everything, don't waste it. Forget it, I don't want to be chased by all the women in the hospital. After speaking, Tang Yichen turned off her laptop and prepared to leave the hospital. I think it's safer for me to spend less time with you. You're wrong. You'll only be safe if you're with me. The next morning, Tang Ning overheard gossip from the people at the hospital. It turned out, Lu Guangli stood up the hospital chief's daughter and returned to the hospital to spend time with Tang Yichen. As an outsider, Tang Ning saw the situation clearly. Lu Guangli was the fox that had his eyes on the rabbit. Only the idiot, Tang Yichen, thought he was Lu Guangli's brother. Lu Guangli was obviously making a decision. Chapter 995. Inside a secluded courtyard in Beijing, a man was sitting in front of a computer in a unique garden-like villa as he looked through every piece of information on Tang Ning. His manager was helping him pack his things. As she passed by, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why are you suddenly interested in Tang Ning?" After Tang Ning announced her withdrawal from Superstar Media and Hai Rui, where do you think she is right now? The manager was carrying a thick stack of documents when she suddenly stretched out one hand and touched the man's forehead. Are you crazy? You never ask about women. But, I'm interested in this woman, but, it's useless even if you're interested. She's already married and has her third child, the manager scoffed. The manager scoffed at his slow reaction. If you have the time, why don't you think about your new work, my dear young Master Han? Do you think she'll like someone with the surname Han? After all, her first boyfriend was named Han Yufan. The manager rolled her eyes and shook her head. I think she'll hate him to death. No matter what, Tang Ning is quite a distance away from us. Don't look for trouble. Focus on your new work. You talk too much. Help me find out where Tang Ning is right now. The manager froze for a moment. She realized that the man was serious. Was he going to seduce a married woman? Regardless of whether Tang Ning was willing or not, anyone would know which side Mo Ting would stand on, right? Plus, to avoid unnecessary trouble, the manager did not agree to the man's request. Was he joking? Wasn't he breaking up a family? She didn't want to do something that would damage her morals. So, the manager did not agree to the young master's request. But, it wasn't hard to find out where Tang Ning was. All she had to do was ask the paparazzi and everything would be clear. Tang Ning stayed at the hospital. Most of her time was spent reading scripts or remotely supervising the post-production of The Ant Queen. Every now and then, she would check on the entertainment news to see how Superstar Media was doing and whether Long Jia was doing well. Tang Ning did not allow Superstar Media's people to visit her at the hospital. They were all important people, so she couldn't allow them to create an uproar just because of her. Most importantly, she had announced that she was temporarily retreating, so the public was not allowed to report any news about her. However, during his break, Elder Mo did drop by once to see Tang Ning. The grandfather and grandson were having the most pleasant conversation. Grandpa knows everything about you from the news. Of course, it's not your fault. Back then, I was tired of the mutual deception in the industry. That's why I left my business in the hands of the rascal. He liked it that way. Grandpa, do you watch sci-fi movies? Ha, you haven't given up yet. I thought you would have given up after Chiao Sun died. There is a lack of mature sci-fi films in the country. I hope that I can fill this gap and create a real masterpiece. Elder Mo scanned Tang Ning from head to toe before placing his gaze on her stomach. You are currently pregnant, so you shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. But, since you've made up your mind, grandfather will definitely help you. Let's see if I know anyone talented in this field. Okay, Tang Ning nodded. Come to think of it, there are so many brands overseas, and they are leaving us further and further behind. If no one is doing it, how embarrassing would it be for domestic sci-fi? After the old man looked at Tang Ning, he casually walked away. It seemed, he had always been this carefree. Tang Ning smiled. But, she suddenly felt her head swell as her heart raced and her ears ring. She suddenly fainted. Mo Ting was still in the middle of a meeting. But, as soon as he saw a phone call from Tang Yichen, he immediately stopped the meeting and left the office. No one could interrupt Ting. But, Tang Ning's matters were always his number one priority. The phone call was from Tang Yichen to let him know that Tang Ning had fainted. Ting immediately ended the meeting and drove straight to the hospital. How is she right now? She's not in any danger, Tang Yichen replied. Why? Is there something wrong with Tang Ning's body? It's pregnancy hypertension. This is the first time it's happened to her, Tang Yichen replied in seriousness. The illness can be mild or severe. If it's serious, both mother and child may die. How do we treat it? Ting furrowed his brows. Normally, she listens to the nutritionist at home. Even during her pregnancy, she has been very careful. I know. But, during pregnancy, all sorts of things can happen to a pregnant woman. It varies from person to person and is uncontrollable. We are still looking for the cause of her illness. Although I promise to make sure she goes into labor, judging from the current situation, she may still have to go into labor early. This is the safest way for both her and the child. I never thought that I would slap myself in the face like this. Is there any way to prevent her from getting hurt? Ting lowered his head and thought for a moment. In the end, he asked Tang Yichen. At this moment, he was no longer the cold-blooded Ting that everyone else knew. Instead, he was a blaming husband and a helpless father. I'm afraid that she'll be in pain. Tang Yichen looked into Ting's eyes in shock. How much did a man need to love a woman to have such a pleading look on his face? Tang Yichen froze for a moment before she replied, the conditions for treatment are very good. It's not as scary as you think. Although the child isn't even 8 months old yet, we can guarantee that the child will be safe. But, if the child is born before 1 month, it will affect her in the future. There is a chance of this happening, so you need to be mentally prepared. There's no need to prepare. She's the most important. Tang Ning's pregnancy had never been smooth. It was the same when she gave birth to the 2 rascals. But, there were times when a woman gave birth to a child was like a veil separating them from death. When Tang Ning wakes up, explain everything to her. She needs to agree first. Ting held on to Tang Ning's hand and nodded his head. After waiting for quite some time, Tang Ning finally woke up. Although Tang Ning didn't know what had happened, she could tell from Ting's expression that she had scared the man again. So, she smiled at Ting, what's with that face? Didn't I wake up fine? Ting wrapped his arms around Tang Ning as his eyes filled with dependence. If I had known that I would have to sacrifice your health in order to have children, I wouldn't have wanted any of them. What's wrong? Tang Yichen said it's pregnancy hypertension, so, I still need to go into labor early. That night, she held back her sleepiness as she waited for Ting to return from the office. She felt Ting holding onto her hand as she leaned against the side of the bed, relieving her fatigue. At this moment, tears began to roll down Tang Ning's cheeks. Unknowingly, why did her child always come first and not Ting? Afterwards, Ting was awoken by the sound of her crying. He sat up and saw her tear-stained face. He did not say a word, he simply helped her wipe her tears away. Arrange the surgery as soon as possible. I agree. Huh? Ting was stunned. I can't stand seeing you suffer, Tang Ning said as she sobbed. I can't hold on anymore. If I go against you, I will only lose. Ting did not say a word. He simply sat down on the bed and pulled Tang Ning into his embrace. They obviously doted on each other, but there were still times when they hurt each other. But, because of this hurt, they finally understood how much they doted on each other. Even if the child does suffer from side effects, she will still be the happiest princess in the world. Trust me, okay? Tang Ning nodded her head. She felt as guilty as she was previously. Don't cry, it's bad for your body. The next morning, Tang Yichen heard that Tang Ning had agreed to the surgery. So, she whispered to Mo Ting, perseverance is indeed the key to victory. She still knows how to dote on you. My only request is to ensure the safety of the surgery, Mo Ting replied. Do I need you to tell me that? I will find her the best obstetrician in the hospital. Tang Yichen arranged. But, there were some things that she didn't expect. After all, she had previously offended the hospital chief's daughter and ended up with Lu Guangli. On top of that, the best obstetrician in the military hospital was the hospital chief's auntie. Tang Yichen immediately went to look for the obstetrics professor and the professor agreed to perform the surgery. But, after the hospital chief's daughter heard about it, she personally went to look for her auntie and asked for a favor. She simply wanted Tang Yichen to agree to one condition. Yichen, look, Guangli is the pride of the military hospital. So, it's understandable that my niece likes him. Since she came looking for me and asked me for a favor, I had no choice but to ask you. After all, you have a good relationship with Dr. Lu. She had a favor to ask of the professor, so she had no choice but to refuse. But, who would have thought, she would be tricked at a time like this? Dr. Lu has always been my brother, Tang Yichen replied. Since you're brothers, that makes things easier. The professor simply wanted to see Tang Yichen's attitude. After Tang Yichen spoke, her conscience did not hurt. After all, she truly felt that Lu Guangli treated her like a brother. But, after Lu Guangli found out, his face darkened. Was Tang Yichen an ingrate that couldn't be fed? If she wanted to perform the surgery, she could come and beg him. But, not only did Tang Yichen look for someone else, she even sold him out. Was she that careless? Thinking of this, Lu Guangli was furious. As long as Tang Yichen was around, he would take revenge and torture her. Look, how much of a grudge does Dr. Lu have against Yichen? I know, right? How could he finish reading such a thick stack of documents in one night? Oh God, he deserves his title of Demon King. Yichen is so pitiful. How did she offend Dr. Lu? Tang Yichen also wanted to know why someone in her early 30s had to suffer such a childish punishment. Lu Guangli, you bastard. Lu Guangli knew that Tang Yichen would curse at him behind his back, so he stood behind her and listened to her speech. The hospital chief's daughter came looking for me and threatened me. What could I do? I'm just a normal doctor. How could I compete with power? I'm the one who feels wronged. Who am I supposed to complain to? In the end, you were the one that stood her up and offended her. Did I ask you to keep me company? You bastard, I'm going to crush your balls. Bring it on. Lu Guangli replied. Chapter 997. As soon as Tang Yichen heard this, she couldn't be bothered to turn around as she turned off her laptop and headed back to her dormitory. Lu Guangli watched as Tang Yichen walked away and froze in place. He then chased after her and said, if you want to save your sister, that's fine, but don't involve me. The dean's daughter invited you to go camping, but you didn't go. That's one thing. Secondly, the professor looked for me to find out my attitude. I think there's nothing wrong with how I expressed myself. Do you think I want to be associated with you? Tang Yichen suddenly yelled at Lu Guangli, I know you're used to being cold and you don't have any relatives at home, so you don't know how it feels to see your loved one suffer. I don't blame you. Tang Yichen, say that again. I'm going to say the same thing no matter how many times I say it. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not. After speaking, Tang Yichen pushed the man out of the room and slammed the door shut. Lu Guangli's face darkened the entire time, but he still turned around and left. After returning home and staying in his own territory, Lu Guangli felt a sense of security. At this time, he began to wonder if he had gone too far with Tang Yichen. Behavior not pleasing to the eye. Because of this, Lu Guangli gave his older brother a phone call and told him about Tang Yichen. After hearing about it, Lu Guangli's older brother laughed. Please, if I was the woman you fell for, I would hate you to death. Can you not bully others so much? I was bullied. You made him work overtime, increased his workload, humiliated him, and threatened him. What do you think? Lu Guangli thought to himself, Tang Yichen and Lu Guangli had spent so many years together like this. She was the only woman he had ever treated like this. Other women didn't even have the right to approach him. Come, come, come. Let me teach you. Tang Yichen was truly angry, that's why she reacted in such an extreme manner. No one liked being bullied by Lu Guangli like this, so she couldn't hold on any longer. Since Lu Guangli didn't want anything to do with her, then all she had to do was stop begging the professor. As soon as Tang Ning heard about the incident, her expression turned ugly. How could the second miss of the Tang family be bullied like this at the hospital? So, as soon as she saw Tang Yichen, she straightforwardly asked, is there a reason why I must use the professor for my surgery? Tang Yichen was a little surprised. She didn't expect Tang Ning to hear about it so quickly, so she explained, she is an authority in this field. In other words, a normal doctor can perform my surgery. There's no need to look for her. Tang Ning said. Even if she wants to look for you, you are the second miss of the Tang family. In terms of status, she can't bully or threaten you. Don't you know this? I don't really like to mention my identity in the hospital, even if you don't like it, you can't change the fact, Tang Ning replied. I won't use my identity to bully others, but I also won't let others bully me. Isn't that right? Even you can't stand to see me being such a coward. Tang Ning nodded her head. I've already told the hospital staff that I don't need a professor. I simply need my original doctor to perform the surgery. So, you don't need to worry. However, Tang Ning's reaction attracted the attention of the hospital's hospital chief. When he heard that his daughter had used her auntie's identity to achieve her own goals, he was so angry that he slapped her across the face. Have you gone this far by throwing yourself at a man? How could you ask your auntie to threaten Tang Yichen? Do you think the Tang family are pushovers? Not to mention, the person that's going to perform the surgery is Tang Ning. If you continue to act so recklessly, you can leave the country. The hospital chief's daughter was angered and hit, so she was naturally unhappy. But, who told her to be weaker than the hospital chief? So, the next morning, the professor paid a visit to Tang Ning's hospital room and personally apologized, Miss Tang, I didn't actually look for Yichen for any other reason. It's just, Professor, I know what happened from start to finish. My sister was insensible and broke the hospital's rules. I apologize on her behalf. Tang Ning's words sounded like she was criticizing her sister, but anyone with sharp ears could tell that she was mocking the professor for breaking the hospital's rules by threatening Tang Yichen. She was implying that the professor was nothing more than a mediocre person. In that case, since it's all a misunderstanding, I'll perform your surgery, no need. I have confidence in my doctor. There's no need for the professor to get involved, Tang Ning replied coldly. The professor did not try to get on Tang Ning's good side, so he had no choice but to leave awkwardly. Meanwhile, Tang Ning's display of strength made the entire hospital realize that the Tang family weren't to be trifled with. So, what was Tang Yichen doing at this time? She had secretly contacted an obstetrics expert from the medical school. The doctor was simple and honest and didn't have any tricks up her sleeves. However, she had opened her own hospital, so the hospital's facilities couldn't compare to the military hospital. Tang Yichen asked, are you willing to go? I still hope that I can do my best to ensure the safety of my little niece. Since you trust me, there's nothing for me to be afraid of, Tangning replied. If that's the case, then things will be a lot easier. I've also prepared my resignation. I'm going to jump ship. Tang Yichen said. Think about it. You're not young anymore. You can't continue living your life aimlessly. Tangning didn't understand what Tang Yichen was referring to. She simply felt that there was something in her heart that she wanted to let go of. No, perhaps, it was a person. It didn't take long before Tang Yichen arrived at the hospital chief's office to hand in her resignation. But, when she arrived, she overheard the chief's daughter whining to the chief. Dad, you've already hit her. Have you calmed down? Auntie has already apologized to Tang Yichen, but Tangning doesn't appreciate it. Plus, the hospital has put in a lot of effort into Tang Yichen's development. What's wrong with her letting me go just once? The chief's secretary also heard this, so she looked at Tang Yichen awkwardly. Tang Yichen smiled and shook her head. She then knocked on the half-closed office door and asked, Can I come in? Oh, it's Yichen. Come in. After receiving permission, Tang Yichen entered the office and placed her resignation letter on the chief's desk. What are you? I don't think I'm suited to stay in the military hospital anymore. Thank you for taking care of me over the years. Yichen, did you suffer because of this incident? The chief immediately asked. Do you think the chief is someone that can't tell right from wrong? You know that the chief would never side with his own daughter. After hearing this, Tang Yichen lifted her head and looked at the chief's daughter. She then sneered, Chief, I'm not just a doctor, I'm also the second miss of the Tang family. If my family needs me, I won't hesitate to help. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.